Chapter 712. 4,000 miles away, a man and a woman were desperately flying across the night sky like shooting stars. They were Chu Fei Ling and Yang Ruolan. The couple was burning with anxiety. They changed horses and hurried on their journey. However, the strength of a healthy horse was not enough to travel 10,000 miles. Therefore, after a few hundred miles, the horse was already exhausted. Every time this happened, if there was a town nearby, they would immediately buy a horse at a high price and continue their journey. If they were in the wilderness, they would abandon the horse and use their lightness technique to fly madly. In 3 days, the two of them had traveled 1,000 miles. They were still 4,000 miles away from the Heavenly Sword Peak and the Lake of Death. Compared to their cultivations, this kind of speed was already world-shocking. However, the two of them were almost completely exhausted. Yang Ruolan was still desperately urging them to fly forward without any regard for their physical strength. They knew that if they rushed over now, they would not be able to affect the battle situation. Even if they rushed over, the couple would not have the strength to fight before the battle ended. However, the two of them were holding back their anger and had to rush over. Along the way, Yang Ruolan's heart was in turmoil. She thought about Wu Qianqian's words. He is an orphan. Or rather, an abandoned child. Others have parents, but he doesn't. When he was at Beyond the Heavens sect, he was usually very quiet and did not speak much. Before that, he did not attract any attention. Later on, I heard from my father that Chu Yang was very strange. It seemed that he had never truly laughed. Even if he laughed, it was a cold laugh, a mocking laugh, and a self-deprecating laugh. It was the same even when he faced a supreme martial artist. No one knew what he was thinking when he laughed. However, there were only a few times in his life when he was truly happy. When I came to Ironcloud Citadel, it was the same. His face was like a piece of iron. Perhaps it was only for a few short days. That was when the Hei Mo clan came. He laughed. I heard it very clearly. When he laughed, he was like an unrestrained child. Unfortunately, his smile was hidden behind the mask. I could not see it. After the Hei Mo clan left, he went to Great Zhao and fought a bloody battle. I'm afraid he would not laugh. Even after destroying Great Zhao and Golden Horse Rider's department, I only saw him heave a sigh of relief. He did not laugh. I wanted to make him laugh. But I lost myself in it. I really don't know what kind of heartless parents would abandon such a child. These were Wu Qianqian's words. Wu Qianqian was probably already in the upper 3 heavens. However, Yang Ruolan's eyes would brim with tears every time she thought of these words. Everyone else had parents, but he didn't. He rarely smiled. He was a piece of iron. In his life, there are only a few times when he is truly happy. The only time he smiled was hidden behind the mask. I wanted him to smile. Yang Ruolan felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. Right now, the only thing she wanted to do was to hug her son tightly in her arms and make it up to him for the past 20 years. However, she was also afraid and nervous. This child was so strong and independent. When she opened her heart, he might not accept her. But whether he accepted it or not, a mother's embrace was always open to her son. When I was with him for the past few days, I rarely saw him smile. There were polite smiles, hesitant smiles, bashful smiles, sneers and mockery, but I have never seen a sincere smile or a hearty smile. This was what Chu Fei Ling said when he was reminiscing. Every time they talked about this, the couple would be speechless. Only their hearts would shatter into pieces. How can I make it up to you, my son? In another direction, Duke Yu was dressed in black and masked. He swept across the land like a ghost and chased after the figures in front. In front of him were the people from the Li clan. Of course, there were also people from other clans. If it was only the Li clan, Duke Yu would have completed his mission long ago. Unfortunately, there were more than one group of people with ulterior motives. Therefore, even someone as strong as Duke Yu could only wait for an opportunity. If he couldn't win against this group of people, he could escape no matter what. However, the key was that if he exposed his true identity, everything would be over. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji gave him this mission. If he couldn't do it, Duke Yu felt that he could only go home and hug his child, Heavenly Sword Peak, in the tent beside the Lake of Despair. Chu Yang was talking. On the surface, GMO seemed to be full of tricks. His sword was sharp and unstoppable. Luo Kadi was ruthless and merciless. Ao Xie Yun was far-sighted. He had already thought of dozens of ways to adapt to the situation. He easily killed the enemy with his sword. Xie Dan Qiong's viburnum flowers fluttered in the wind. His eyes were cold and unwavering. It was enough to show that his determination was superb. Chu Yang said slowly, listing out everyone's strong points. Everyone listened attentively. They didn't understand what he was going to say. However, it's far from enough. You're far from enough. I can only say that if you guys reach the upper three heavens, you won't even be fit to carry the shoes of others. Within a few days, corpses would be everywhere. There wouldn't be a place to bury them. Chu Yang's gaze turned sharp. He swept his gaze across the faces of the few people. His gaze was cold and sharp. You guys are far from enough. Although no one refuted his words, the doubts and unwillingness on their faces were obvious. No matter what, they couldn't be as bad as Chu Yang described. Don't be unconvinced. Did you see the various dukes who came today? Chu Yang laughed coldly and asked. Of course, we saw those few people. They are also important people to pay attention to. Xie Dan Qiong weighed his words carefully and said, Boss, don't be angry. From what I see, there are a few people among them. However, most of them rely on their clans. It looked very tiresome. Perhaps there's another side to them. However, from the looks of it, even if they're hiding something, they can't reach there. When he said this, GMO and Luo Kadi nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Indeed, those few people were simply unbearable to look at. For example, Yi Shiyu was arrogant, Li Ba Tian was arrogant, Shi Chengyu was lured into a ditch by Mo Tianji, and the domineering Chen Feichen. The gloomy Xiao Juchen. These people undoubtedly gave people a bad first impression. Gu Duxing raised his eyebrows. Ao Xie Yun frowned. Mo Tianji held his wine cup. He looked a little unhappy. The three of them wanted to stop Xie Dan Qiong and the other two from speaking. However, they didn't do so in the end. It was better to suffer a little than to be told off. Chu Yang's face darkened. Is that what you think? Perhaps there's something that we haven't seen yet? Xie Dan Qiong tried to salvage the situation. Ha! Chu Yang was so angry that he laughed. If Luo Kadi and GMO said this, I wouldn't be surprised. However, when you, Xie Dan Qiong, said this, I really wonder if your brain is stuffed with paste. Chu Yang snorted heavily and said, You only saw that they each had their own temperament. However, you didn't see that they all knew when to advance and retreat. They knew how to make a choice and knew how to distance themselves. More importantly, each of them was confident. I also didn't think that since they had tempers, what was supporting their tempers after their tempers? It's their abilities. Chu Yang said angrily. Yi Shiyu's womanly behavior is a joke. However, you have to know that as long as they're not pure women, it's very rare for them to behave like this in public. Even if a man is mentally perverted and desires to be a woman, he will still pay attention to his image and his self-esteem. He will only show some abnormalities when he's not paying attention to them. However, Yi Shiyu is so unscrupulous. Why? As a member of the Yi clan, how can he be so shameless? Have you ever thought that this is actually a deadly disguise? Now that you see him like this, even if he's a member of the Yi clan, he will still feel contempt. You will feel that you look down on him. Isn't that right? However, if you think this way, you've already placed your lives in your own hands. He only let you see the transvestite side of him. However, he didn't let you see the ruthless and decisive side of him. This side of him is indispensable to a member of the Yi clan. If he's not good enough, he won't be able to survive in the clan. And Yi Shiyu is the third duke of the Yi clan. He's waiting for you to look down on him. Once you're faced with an enemy, even if your abilities are on par with his, you'll still lose your life to him because of this. Because since he sacrificed his reputation in exchange for this slight advantage, he won't give you a chance to regret it. Therefore, under his transvestite appearance, there's definitely a deadly aura. If he doesn't do this, then he's not Yi Shiyu. He's also not fit to be the third duke of the Yi clan. Every clan has a good-for-nothing brother. However, no good-for-nothing brother can become the third duke of a big clan like the Yi clan. Big clans have tens of thousands of years of history. When we consider anything related to them, we have to consider the most terrifying aspect. The brothers broke out in cold sweat. Indeed, when they saw Yi Shiryu, they all felt that he was funny, looked down on and had goosebumps. However, the only thing they didn't feel was fear. However, this feeling of not feeling fear was the most terrifying thing. Ling Han Shui is a woman. However, it's precisely because of this that a woman can represent the Ling clan. It's not just because of her strength. It's definitely because of her intelligence. However, when we look at Ling Han Shui, she's like a piece of ice that won't melt. Normally, people with cold hearts and cold faces give people the impression that they're cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Another impression is that they're not very scheming. Because coldness is a layer of protection. There's another point. Coldness can arouse a person's desire to conquer. Especially those with high positions who think that they're great. The greatest achievement in conquering a woman is conquering this type of iceberg. Coincidentally, no matter how courteous the dukes of big clans appear to be, they're also very arrogant. Then could Ling Han Shui's coldness be a trap? Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, I'm very unwilling to think of a cold and beautiful woman in that way. Perhaps she's not cold and beautiful, but I still have to think of it this way. This is related to our survival in the future. Do you understand what I mean? Everyone nodded. Therefore, this Ling Han Shui is definitely not to be underestimated. Chu Yang said, what's your impression of Ling Han Shui? Ao Shiyun and Xiedanqiong, all of you admire a type of beauty. It's one thing to have a beautiful heart, but after beauty comes danger. Even idiotic women can make men fight for them if they have a beautiful face. Not to mention noble ladies from big clans. Chapter 713. Chu Yang snorted, you didn't see what you should have seen, and you blindly saw what you shouldn't have seen. You've made enemies for yourself. The other clans have more or less invited the two of you, but why didn't the Ling clan? It's because the two of you are already dispensable in her eyes. If you take a step forward, you'll be killed. If you take a step back, it doesn't matter. The four of them lowered their heads in shame. Sweat dripped down Jimo's head, but he didn't dare to make a sound. This was because there was an extra hand on his waist, and the muscles on his waist had been twisted. Behind him, Huyen Aobo's face was solemn as she listened to Chu Yang carefully. It was as if that hand didn't belong to her. Also, the elder of the Zhuge clan hasn't said a single word since he came here. He's so low-key that it's unbelievable. However, look at the other 8 clans. Whether it's the arrogant Li Ba Tian, the domineering Qin Fei Qin, the perverted Yi Shiryu, or the otherworldly Meng Se, none of them dared to provoke the elder of the Zhuge clan. They didn't even exchange any pleasantries. Don't tell me that the clans don't greet each other when they meet in the upper 3 heavens? Even if it's a blood feud, shouldn't they do something when they meet? This is enough to prove that they're wary of this person. And this person's low-key nature gives them a chance to save their face. Then, what kind of role does the elder of the Zhuge clan, who didn't even reveal his name, have? Chu Yang said all this in one breath. Even Mo Tianji's face changed. This was because there were many things that even he didn't think of and didn't notice. How can a man of the upper 3 heavens not disguise himself as an outstanding gongong of a great clan? Think about yourselves. The clans of the upper 3 heavens fight to the death. Don't you think that the upper 3 heavens doesn't? Mo Tianji, when you fought with Mo Tianyun, you pretended to be a saint. As for Ao Xie-yun, I don't think you're like this in front of your brothers. Luo Kadi just got rid of his crisis, but what about before? GMO, are you really born so lazy? Even you guys can pretend. And it's for a clan that can't even compare to the branch of a great clan. Why don't you guys consider it, but not the elders of great clans? Have you inherited a bunch of idiots after 10,000 years? Is that even possible? Why do you only see the domineering, arrogant, perverted and ridiculous exterior, but not the inner workings? The more Chu Yang spoke, the angrier he got. Based on your current state of mind, I'll bring you to the upper three heavens. To court death. The more Chu Yang spoke, the angrier he got. In the end, he was on the verge of swearing. This was the first time that these brothers had seen Chu Yang lose his temper. So, they couldn't help but keep quiet out of fear. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Mo Tianji frowned and slowly pondered. The brothers may be lacking, but they are definitely not as bad as Chu Yang said. Chu Yang even went so far as to accentuate and magnify a certain kind of disadvantage. Then he used this as a pretext to make a fuss and scold the locust tree. He exaggerated one deficiency to 10 points and even included everyone. What was his intention? Li Batian. The moment he appeared, he was arrogant and domineering, as if he didn't put anyone in his eyes. But when he saw Ling Han Shui, he immediately softened. Was he trying to say that he bullied the weak and feared the strong? Or is he trying to prove to everyone that he's a lecher? Let me tell you, no matter what you think of him, once you enter these two areas, as long as you face him, you will definitely die. Chen Feichen has no regard for others. He seems arrogant, but everyone who tried to recruit Du Xing only said that he was rich and powerful. But Chen Feichen said at the end, if you're willing, we're brothers. We'll share fortune and misfortune. We'll never abandon each other in life and death. We're willing to swear to the heavens and earth. Chu Yang smiled gently. A duke from a great clan in the upper three heavens made such a huge promise to someone from the upper three heavens. If it wasn't Du Xing, but someone else, what would their reaction be? A gentleman would die for his friend. He's so eager for talents and has such sharp eyes. How can he be the arrogant person that he appears to be? The other great clans only have hope for Du Xing. They think that he's extraordinary. But Chen Feichen is certain that Du Xing will reach the peak. That's why he's doing this. Have you ever thought of this? Everyone lowered their heads. Their faces were heavy. Chen Feichen had obviously avoided everyone when he looked for Gu Du Xing. But why would Gu Du Xing hide it from Chu Yang? Now that Chu Yang said this, everyone was shocked. Don't blame me for being angry. We'll eventually reach the upper three heavens in the future. Many of these people will be our enemies. Chu Yang said seriously, a single mistake in judgment will be a matter of life and death. If I don't say it today, it'll be too late after a few days when your hearts are set. Because your first impression will have already left a shadow in your heart. But that shadow will be the cause of your failure. Everyone nodded silently. They felt that they were already sweating profusely. Their hearts were beating wildly. The tipsy feeling that they had just felt was gone. Everyone's heart was clear. Mo Tianji thought deeply and nodded slowly. What Chu Yang said made a lot of sense. It was indeed necessary. However, what Mo Tianji valued and thought about was Chu Yang's observation in these words. Chu Yang's understanding of human nature, his research into conspiracies, his plans for the future, and his deep thinking about how to conduct himself in the world. Mo Tianji smiled in his heart. It's really a blessing to be friends with Chu Yang in this life. If he can get through this crisis, then I will be able to move unhindered in the upper three heavens with him in the future. Then, my intelligence and his scheming methods will complement each other seamlessly. They will be a perfect pair of pearls and jade. Thinking about this, Mo Tianji was suddenly stunned. He thought of something. Could it be that Chu Yang himself also felt the crisis this time? Now, he's deliberately giving me a warning? Making arrangements for my death? Thinking about the words giving me a warning, making arrangements for my death, Mo Tianji suddenly understood. Chu Yang's words just now, especially towards the end, had clearly used a kind of shocking martial technique. The effect should be, giving me a warning. Chu Yang deliberately drank with everyone first. When everyone was tipsy, he slowly attracted everyone's attention. Unknowingly, he gave giving me a warning. He made everyone wake up from their drunken stupor with a start. In this way, everyone was sweating profusely and their drunkenness was gone. Mo Tianji stole a glance at everyone and saw that everyone was sweating profusely. Luo Kudi's cotton clothes were also soaked, revealing traces of wetness. Mo Tianji secretly nodded. This was the moment when a person's mind was the most flexible and clear-headed. It was also the moment when it was easiest to have indelible memories. Since this was the case, what Chu Yang was going to say next would be of great importance. Then, he only needed to consider what he was going to say next to know what he was thinking. Mo Tianji lowered his eyes. His face was calm and peaceful, but he was extremely alert. He pricked up his ears and prepared to analyze what Chu Yang was going to say next. He had even secretly used the world control technique to merge his own energy into the ethereal operation of heaven's secrets. It was as if a pair of eyes had opened in the dark and were looking at Chu Yang, analyzing Chu Yang's state of mind and the operation of heaven's secrets. He suddenly had a feeling. Perhaps, Chu Yang's analysis and planning this time was the real first step of Heavenly Armament Pavilion to conquer the heavens. Sure enough, Chu Yang's sharp eyes looked at the brothers one by one and said, "When the big clans tried to recruit us, except for Du Xing, they only tried to recruit us perfunctorily. This also shows that they did not put us in their eyes at all. In fact, they are indeed stronger than us now. The reason why they are stronger than us is because, since young, they have been instilled with the ultimate goal in their lives by their clans. From the beginning of their cultivation, they have been constantly moving towards that goal. Their goal is incomparably clear." Mo Tianji was suddenly enlightened when Chu Yang said this. He suddenly realized something. He always felt that the big clans had an inexplicable confidence compared to his brothers. But it was not the arrogance of a superior. Mo Tianji had been thinking about it, but he did not understand where this confidence came from. But when Chu Yang said this, he immediately understood. Goal. A life with a clear goal and a life without a goal were completely different. Think about it. You know how to work hard, know how to improve, and even be willing to risk your life. But you do not know what you want to do in the future. This kind of hard work was equivalent to useless work. The higher one's cultivation, the bigger the gap between them and people of the same level. This was also a case of a first-grade martial saint being able to kill another first-grade martial saint instantly. That was the biggest difference between them. Having a goal was blissful and full of motivation. A life without a goal was full of sorrow and confusion. How could this be the same? Chu Yang said solemnly, "And among us, there are only 3 people who have already determined their life goals. That is Du Xing, Tianji, and me. As for the rest of you, you have not. GMO. Let me ask you, why are you cultivating, working hard, and risking your life? What do you want to do in the future? What do you want to achieve in the end? Where is the end of your life?" Chu Yang asked a series of questions. GMO thought carefully. Suddenly, he lowered his head deeply. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans dripped down from his forehead. They dripped into the wine bowl in front of him and made a sound. "Ao Xian, what about you?" Chu Yang's cold and sharp gaze looked at Ao Xian. Ao Xian was tongue-tied. He, who had always been eloquent, was actually speechless at this moment. After a long while, he lowered his head as well. Chu Yang's gaze turned to Luo Kadi. Luo Kadi shrank into a ball like a quail, avoiding his gaze. Chu Yang looked at Xie Danqiong. Xie Danqiong had already lowered his head. Before this, everyone thought that they had a goal, and their goal was clear. But at this moment, after asking about it in detail, they realized that their goals were too general, too vague, and had no substance at all. Moreover, their goals in the past were nothing more than to control the clan and become the clan leader. However, there was no need to be afraid of not knowing the quality of the goods. Instead, there was a need to compare the quality of the goods. Compared to the great aristocratic families of the upper 3 heavens, this goal was not worth mentioning. Was the goal that they worked so hard for their entire lives something that could be destroyed with just a word from others? So, other than sincerely recruiting Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji, they were just perfunctory with the few of you. They even hoped that you would not agree. In other words, they looked down on you. You are not in their eyes at all. Chapter 7:14. Everyone's breathing quickened as they rushed over. Everyone was panting and their faces were gradually flushed red. Their eyes were burning with anger and they couldn't help but clench their fists. Everyone was proud and arrogant. How could they be willing to be looked down upon like this? Chu Yang looked at them coldly and said, You're not convinced? What's the use of not being convinced? He paused and his face became more and more serious. It was as if a layer of frost had covered his face. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard. I've created a goal for each of you. Chu Yang insipidly said, if you want to achieve this goal, you'll have to put in 100 times more effort than before. I'll say it one by one. As for whether you can achieve it or not, that's your problem. Everyone's spirits were lifted. Mo Tianji arranged for Dong Wushang to go to the upper three heavens because Dong Wushang has the protection of love and the ultimate saber. He no longer needs a goal. The reason why I'm not talking about Gu Duxing is because Gu Duxing has nothing else in his life other than his sword. He no longer needs a goal. Mo, Chu Yang shouted. Mo's whole body trembled and he straightened his back. Boss, you're too jumpy. You don't have a long time. No matter what he did, it would only last for a few days. Once it's gone, you'll forget about it. Because you're too open-minded, if you continue like this, you'll never reach the peak. So, from now on, you have to focus on changing this aspect. I'll give Yen Ao a plan for this later. She'll be in charge of urging you to change. Mo Tianji almost spat out the wine in his mouth. Huyen Ao urging GMO. Chu Yang's move was really a stroke of genius. You can't focus on controlling the sword, but the sword is still your focus. Your goal is to chase after Gu Duxing. This is your lifelong goal. No matter how far Gu Duxing goes, you have to chase after him with all your might. Remember, I'll only allow you to be 3 levels behind him. If you surpass the 4th level, it's up to you. Chu Yang's voice was very cold. GMO only felt a surge of hot blood in his heart. If second brother Gu surpasses the 4th step, then I, GMO, don't need to live anymore. He's already at the 4th rank. Moreover, Duxing will be able to break through to the 4th rank of Sword Emperor in half a year's time. Therefore, you must break through to the Emperor level within these 6 months. Then, you must break through to the 2nd grade of the Emperor level. We must do it. GMO shouted. Duxing, if you're waiting for him because of your brotherhood, then you'll also be done for. Chu Yang said. I will teach him a lesson. Let him know that he has to pay a price for chasing after me. Gu Duxing faintly smiled. It's over. It seems that third brother Ji won't even have the time to consummate his marriage. Luo Kudi winked. Huyen Ao's face turned red as she glared at Luo Kudi. To ensure that Miss Ao's advice is effective, I suggest we get married immediately after we return. Chu Yang said, regarding this matter, Mo Tianji will act as the matchmaker. Gu Duxing will act as the person. After the 2 clans contact each other, we'll quickly settle this matter. All the brothers were stunned. Mo Tianji is the matchmaker, Gu Duxing is the matchmaker. What are you doing? You're the boss. But Chu Yang obviously didn't want to waste any more words on this matter. Then he changed his target. Luo Kudi, your goal is even simpler. Keep up with GMO and advance side by side. Let him surpass you by 2 ranks, then you can go home and sleep. If you can't even keep up with GMO, then you're really useless. There's no future for you to mingle among the brothers. Chu Yang said coldly. Luo Kudi's face turned pale for a moment, then it turned red. It was as if he had been thrown into an ice cave and then fished out of it. Then he was thrown into the mouth of a volcano. How can I not even keep up with third brother Ji? Boss, don't look down on me. Luo Kudi said angrily. Whether you can keep up or not, it's not a matter of words. Chu Yang said coldly. You little wolf? You think you can keep up with me? GMO sneered and looked at him disdainfully. Luo Kudi was furious and glared at him. Mo Tianji sighed in his heart. Chu Yang didn't even mention the upper 3 heavens or dominating the heavens because that goal was too far away. Instead, it was easy to be frightened. It was just that the brothers they were most familiar with set the goal. Made them feel that they were within reach. That was why they put in 1,000 times more effort. In other words, Chu Yang was using the brotherhood that everyone cherished the most to force them to change. If you don't change and improve, then I'm sorry, please leave our circle of brothers. If this was said a year ago, even if everyone felt uncomfortable, they wouldn't do anything. But now, during this period of time, the brothers had already become an inseparable group. If they left in humiliation because they were not strong enough, everyone wouldn't be able to bear it. But Emotianji also broke out in cold sweat. Although the goal of catching up with Gu Duxing was real, it was actually more difficult than dominating the heavens. This was a sword sovereign that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. Ao Shiyun. Chu Yang turned around. Since you treat me as a brother, I'll also make a plan for you. Ao Shiyun said calmly, I will definitely abide by boss's words. You have too many distracting thoughts and it's not good for your cultivation. So you must abandon them. You are now at the same level as GMO and Luo Kudi. So, your goal is to not fall behind the two of them at any time. If you can't surpass them, then it's your failure. If you are still left behind by them, then it's your elimination. Chu Yang's voice was firm. This sentence caused the three of them to feel indignant at the same time. Xianqiong. Chu Yang said calmly, you are different from others. You are an introvert and actually already have your own goal. It's just that you are not clear about it yet. Xianqiong said respectfully, please advise me, boss. When your viburnum flower is released, your face is full of murderous intent and your eyes are also full of murderous intent. Your whole body has the aura of a butcher. Chu Yang said, this is the lowest level of viburnum flowers. The lowest level? Xianqiong muttered to himself. When your heart is as still as water and your eyes are calm when you release the viburnum flower, then you will be at the second level. When you release the viburnum flower and feel happy, then you will be at the third level. When you release the viburnum flower and feel the joy of the viburnum flower, then you will be at the fourth level. When you release the viburnum flower and feel the joy in your heart, from your eyes to your whole body, blooming like a viburnum flower, then you will have reached the pinnacle of viburnum flowers. At that time, you will naturally have a new understanding. Chu Yang said, but that goal is too far away. You'd better take it step by step. Xianqiong pondered for a long time and said, I will remember. Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing and the others secretly clicked their tongues. At first glance, Xianqiong's cultivation was very simple and only his face and eyes changed. But thinking carefully, it was creepy. When the viburnum flower was released, it was to kill. Without murderous intent, how could it kill? To practice until the viburnum flower was released, what kind of state of mind was this? The experience during this period was enough to make a person go back and forth in the 18 levels of hell. After Chu Yang finished, he didn't speak anymore. Xianqiong kept waiting for him to speak, but he didn't. She couldn't help but feel anxious. She asked, Big brother Chu, you have told everyone. Why not Tan Tan? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Tan has his own path. I can't make a plan for him. He sighed deeply in his heart. Not only can I not make a plan for Tan Tan's goal, but I also can't make a plan for his marriage. Who knows what kind of awakening will be like? If I forcibly tie Xianqiong and Tan Tan together, and there will be a tragedy in the future, what should I do? Chu Yang didn't have the slightest confidence in this matter. What about me? Xianqiong asked. Follow your heart. Chu Yang thought for a long time. Then he said these words in a deep voice, but no matter what choice you make, don't regret it in the future. Don't have any regrets. Xianqiong's face lit up. Suddenly, she hugged Tan Tan's hand and said loudly, no matter where you go, I will follow you. I won't leave your side. Tan Tan giggled foolishly and said happily, you are so annoying. Mo Tianji remained silent and waited. But Chu Yang didn't say the words he wanted to hear the most. Mo Tianji's heart gradually sank. He couldn't help but ask tentatively, what about the Heavenly Armament Pavilion? What about the Heavenly Armament Pavilion? When Chu Yang heard this, he immediately became excited. He happily raised his eyebrows and said, Tianji is indeed Tianji. You can see the crux of the matter at a glance. Gu Duxing will be in charge of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion for the time being. Mo Tianji will be the strategist. Brothers, let's work hard together. What about you? The brothers asked together. I am going to cultivate in seclusion. Chu Yang's face flashed. In the eyes of the brothers, There was a kind of hope and joy that came from the bottom of his heart. He said in a deep voice, "This time, I came to the lake of despair the most. First, the supreme martial artist's divine sense made me feel something. It seemed to belong to the heavenly Tao. It was very ethereal and I couldn't grasp it. So, I want to cultivate in seclusion here at the lake of despair for a while. I believe that once I succeed in comprehending it, my strength will soar. I am very confident about this." Chu Yang chuckled. The brothers immediately beamed with joy. "Really? This is great. Cultivate in seclusion here?" Mo Tianji frowned and his heart sank. Also, when that bastard Gu Duxing broke through, he actually pulled me into his realm. So, my understanding of the way of the sword has also improved. Chu Yang said clearly, "So, although I will need some time to cultivate in seclusion this time, I will definitely reap great benefits." "That's right. Boss told me this before I broke through." Gu Duxing nodded. "I see." Seeing Gu Duxing nod, everyone cheered. "This time, I need absolute peace for my seclusion." Chu Yang said, "So, when you go down the mountain tomorrow, leave some resources for me." "I won't go down with you. I will cultivate in seclusion on the mountain." He raised his eyebrows and his eyes turned cold. "I will say the ugly words first. I don't know how long this seclusion will take. Will it be a few days or a few months? But when I come out of seclusion, if your strength is still the same, you know what I mean." The brothers laughed and said, "When the time comes, you will definitely see us in a different light. Let's wait and see." Chu Yang looked at everyone with suspicion and ridicule. "It's a deal." Luo Kadi and the others raised their chests. The tent was filled with jubilation. Everyone was beaming with joy. Mo Tianji's face was very gloomy. His hand that was holding the wine cup trembled. He felt as if his heart had fallen from a cliff and suddenly sank. He felt a sharp pain. Could it be that Chu Yang has already finished settling his affairs? My heart hurts to find out that my monthly votes have been destroyed. This really makes me sad. Chapter 7:15. In the morning, the group started to descend the mountain. Chu Yang was full of joy as he bid farewell to his brothers. Everyone patted his shoulders and laughed. The group gradually left. The world returned to silence. The side of the lake of despair was clean. Not even a trace of blood was left. Snow started to fall from the sky again. Chu Yang smiled and walked back calmly. Only a tent was left. The brothers worked together and firmly set up the tent before they left. More than half of the tent was buried in the snow. Such a tent would only be destroyed by the wind. It would never be blown away. Inside, there were piles of food and wine. It was enough for Chu Yang to use for half a year. On the coffee table at the side, there were lamps and flints. These were more than enough for a year. Top-quality animal skins covered the entire tent from the ceiling to the walls and even the ground. Chu Yang lay on the animal skins and thought for a long time. Gu Duxing is in charge and Mo Tianji is in charge. I'm at ease. You all have your own goals. I'm also at ease. In the future, even without me, you can roam freely in the heavenly layer. As for Mo Qingwu, let's not talk about her. With Mo Tianji as her elder brother, he would never mistreat his younger sister. With Tan Tan, who was about to awaken as the Demon King, Meng Chao Rant's wish wouldn't be a problem. As for the rest, you're at ease, right? Chu Yang smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with melancholy. In this life, I've made up for all my regrets, right? There's nothing else that I can't forget. It's a pity that I've never stayed in my mother's arms for even a moment. I don't even know what you're like. The water in the lake of despair was boiling more and more. It was as if there was something at the bottom of the lake that was calling out to it. The sword tip of the calamity sword, the sword blade. The sword edge began to move intensely and anxiously. Chu Yang had a feeling that he couldn't suppress it. The space was tangled. She was also flipping the screen. The sword spirit was nowhere to be found. I'm at ease. Chu Yang lay quietly. He didn't move. From dawn to dusk, he felt the calamity sword's movement in his body. His heart was clear. He couldn't control it. Chu Yang could feel that his body was no longer under his control. He was walking towards the lake of despair step by step. He was being sucked in, it was over. However, the sword spirit's last words had left Chu Yang without the slightest bit of hope in his heart. This time, your chances of surviving this great tribulation are definitely not more than 5%. Even. There wasn't even a 1 in 10,000 chance. Therefore, Chu Yang had asked the sword spirit for a favor. Using all of the sword spirit's divine power to help him suppress the calamity sword's abnormal movements, and then providing him with a strong spiritual power, he used the method of severe warning to make his brother firmly remember what he said today. That was their life goal. Originally, Chu Yang had wanted to get a few sets of mental cultivation and martial arts that were suitable for his brothers to practice. However, the sword spirit fell into a deep slumber after doing all this. Its godly power had been completely exhausted. This time, the sword spirit was able to accept it. Anyway, Chu Yang won't be able to survive. So, I'll still have to fall into a deep sleep. He slept for 10,000 years. If Chu Yang can endure it, then I can wake up at any time as Chu Yang's cultivation progresses. Night fell on the land again. Clang. The calamity sword's sword tip shone brightly. It jumped out of Chu Yang's dantian and flew around Chu Yang's body. Clang. The calamity sword's blade also came out of Chu Yang's body and shone with a majestic light. Whoosh. The calamity sword's blade flashed coldly on the surface of Chu Yang's body. The 3 parts of the sword let out a clear sword cry. Suddenly, there was a huge storm in the lake of despair. A sound like a dragon's roar seemed to ring out from the depths of one's spirit. In the lake of despair, a sword light suddenly rushed out of the water like a dragon emerging from the sea. It carried with it thunder and lightning. The 2 supreme martial artists released their divine senses at the same time and faced this sword light. With a loud bang, the divine senses of the 2 supreme level experts suddenly vanished like smoke in thin air. Then, a sword light flew up as if it was cutting through the blue dome of heaven. In an unknown place far away, 2 people opened their eyes at the same time. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Then, they spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Who's so powerful? Could it be a god? Both of them said at the same time. Their gazes were heavy and serious. He destroyed their divine senses with 1 strike. What kind of cultivation was this? Both of them turned their heads at the same time and looked at a place in the void with conflicting gazes. Over there, in the distant past, both of them had left their divine senses there. Let's go and take a look. A thunderclap exploded in midair. The entire dark sky suddenly split into 2 different colors. Half of it was bright as day. The other half was pitch black. It was almost transparent. The sword roared like a dragon and rushed into the clouds. With a loud rumble, the entire level heavens continent trembled in unison. Countless mountains and valleys collapsed at this moment. Countless snowy mountains and icy peaks collapsed at the same time. Such a scene happened in the upper 3 heavens, lower 3 heavens, and upper 3 heavens. The sword tip let out a long cry, the sword edge let out a long cry, and the sword blade let out a sharp whistle. 3 sword lights entwined up at the same time. 4 streaks of sword light circled in the air, cutting the night sky into pieces. After a long time, the sword lights flashed and formed streaks of lightning that connected the heavens and the earth. Night fell again. In the pitch-black night sky, 4 sword lights crisscrossed to form a character. Come! Chu Yang laughed and floated out of the tent. His gaze became steady at this moment. No hope? Hee hee, even if there's only a 1 in a million chance, will I, Chu Yang, give up? Death is one thing, but the destruction of my divine senses is nothing more than this. But before I die, I, Chu Yang, am still Chu Yang. I'm still the owner of the calamity sword. I'm coming. Chu Yang laughed and leaped up. He welcomed the strong suction force and flew like a dragon in the sky. In a flash, he landed in the lake of despair. In the lake of despair, where waves were surging. The sword lights in midair disappeared instantly. The sword tip, sword edge, and sword blade pounced into their mother's embrace. They followed behind Chu Yang and entered the lake of despair. The lake of despair was surging like a raging ocean. In an instant, it became as smooth as a mirror. Even. There were no ripples on the surface of the water. Everything returned to normal. It was as if nothing had happened. The commotion here caused the entire heavens to be in an uproar. Almost everyone in the heavens saw the huge word in the sky at the same time. Come. Come where? Come what? Everyone looked up at the sky in unison. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan were so tired that they didn't even look human. Even with their cultivation, they felt as if their legs were filled with lead. They were still 2,500 miles away from the heavenly sword peak. At this moment, the sky flashed crazily. The two of them saw the huge word in the sky. Come. What happened? At this moment, the two of them fell to the ground due to the shock brought by the huge word. This word seems to be in the direction of the heavenly sword peak. Chu Feiling looked at the huge word and said solemnly, "What?" Yang Ruolan jumped up. "Did something happen at the heavenly sword peak? Let's go quickly." The two of them jumped up. They didn't care about their clan's reputation anymore. After running for some distance, they discovered a caravan. They immediately went forward to snatch 2 horses and galloped away. The big clans in the upper 3 heavens became worried at the same time. In a secret courtyard in the Zhuge clan, an elder in hemp clothes sighed deeply. In the Zhuge clan's hall, someone was flipping through the clan's records. On the first page, the diary left behind by the first ancestor of the Zhuge clan. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. A word spanned across the sky. The wise men of the Zhuge clan all had solemn expressions. The Yi clan was the most powerful clan among the big dominating clans. They also opened a book made of purple crystal pages. This book was the size of a room. Just this book made of purple crystal was a treasure trove of vitality. But only one book was made. Every page was filled with words that were carved with the tip of a sword. This was the true record of the heavens. It was the life of the heavens ruler, the Calamity Sword Master. Here, there's a record here. Someone pointed to a small paragraph of writing on the second page. An elder with silver hair and beard looked at this line of small words. He seemed to feel the crisscrossing sword aura of the writer and read it out softly with a respectful expression. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a huge word appeared in the heavens and earth, sword. This word connects the heavens and earth. Everyone's expressions were solemn. They turned another page. There's more here. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a huge word appeared in the heavens, Master. Page 1. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a huge word appeared in the heavens and earth, Heaven. Page 8. Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Sword of Calamity. Strange phenomena appeared in the heavens, shocking the entire world. The sword light formed a large character that shone with boundless radiance, illuminating the heavens, earth. Page 10. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a huge word appeared, Who? Page 12. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a word appeared, Ken. Page 14. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, a word appeared in the heavens and earth, Obstruct. Page 10. When the Lord Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword, thousands of mountains collapsed and the heavens passageway was completely blocked for 3 months. Up and down were not connected. At that time, a word appeared in the heavens. When the white-bearded elder saw this, he let out a long sigh. After a long time, his eyes were lifeless as he said in a heavy voice, Do you see it? This is the life history of the previous 8 masters of the Calamity Sword. Moreover, the clearest record is the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword. There is no description of the other fragments. The previous 8 masters of the Sword Master each had a word. When combined, it was, the Sword Master of the heavens and earth, who can stop me? Now, another word appeared in the heavens and earth. It is come. This means that the current master of the Calamity Sword, the 1st generation, has obtained the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword. When the first and second words are combined, it is a complete sentence. The Sword Master of the heavens and earth, who can stop me? The calamity has begun. The silver-haired elder let out a long sigh. Where should the Yi clan go from here? Everyone was dumbstruck at the same time. Chapter 716. Old Ancestor, the current head of the Yi clan, Yi Bukong, had always been eloquent and scheming, but at this moment he actually stuttered. Let's wait and see. The old ancestor let out a long sigh. This old ancestor was the spiritual pillar of the Yi clan. His cultivation had already reached a frightening level. 3,000 years ago, he had already stepped into the ranks of the supreme beings. He was as famous as Ning Tianya and Bu Lu Qing back then. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the old ancestor of the Lu clan was. Including the other members of the Yi clan who appeared in this room, every one of them was a senior expert. The one with the lowest seniority was the current head of the Yi clan, Yi Bukong. These people had not appeared in the past few decades or hundreds of years. Ordinary members of the Yi clan didn't even know that there were such existences in their clan, let alone seeing them. However, when the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword caused the phenomenon of heaven and earth, these people, no matter where they were in seclusion, all rushed here at the same time. It could be seen how serious the matter was and how serious it had become. As members of the ruling clans who were familiar with the Calamity Sword's master, these senior experts all firmly remembered one thing. The fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword was the true beginning of the turning point of the heavenly layer. When the Calamity Sword's master obtained the fourth fragment, the heavenly layer would truly be turbulent. No matter how many clans had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, they would be tossed about in the wind and rain at this moment. No one could guarantee that their own Quan clan would be able to survive the cleansing of the Calamity Sword's master. In other words, from this moment on, the Calamity Sword's master would start a fight to the death with the ruling clans. Because the appearance of the fourth fragment meant that the Calamity Sword's master had successfully found his tribulations. His claws and fangs. A character who could overturn rivers and seas. The next head of the ruling clans. In other words, none of the existing ruling clans would be chosen. They would definitely be mortal enemies. At this moment, the ruling clans who still had some hope in their hearts felt as if their hearts had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Think of a way to find this Calamity Sword's master and destroy him. Yi Bukong thought silently. Don't think about destroying the Calamity Sword's master now. You won't be able to find him. You won't be able to. The ancestor of the Yi clan, Yi Chunqiu, rolled his eyes. He seemed to have seen through Yi Bukong's thoughts. He specifically warned, for the past 10,000 years, there have been many clans who have been trying to do this. However, those clans who have this idea are usually the first to be destroyed. Moreover, the Calamity Sword Master is mysterious. I'm afraid that even his subordinates don't know his true identity. If you want to kill him, you have to kill everyone in the upper and lower heavens. Moreover, with the appearance of the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword, the mysteries of heaven are completely obscured. No one is allowed to pry into it. The most important thing is the fourth fragment of the Sword of Calamity. It will completely seal off the sky. After a month, there won't be a single path that can be used. No one knows whether Master Tribulation is in the upper three heavens, the lower three heavens, or the lower three heavens. Because Calamity Sword's master has a special privilege that surpasses ours. Before the second sword fragment appears, the passageway to the heavens cannot be opened. Yi Chunqiu said slowly, if you want to kill Sword Master Jie, you have to wait until he comes to Shang three heavens. This was the will of heaven. Anyone who disobeys will die. I see. Yi Bukong fell into deep thought. Ancestor, this is really strange. It's clear that the heavens are protecting Sword Master Jie. Yi Chunqiu's face darkened. All the seniors of the Yi clan looked over with burning gazes. There was strong dissatisfaction in their eyes. Yi Bukong was nervous. Did I say something wrong? Yi Chunqiu rolled his eyes and looked at Yi Bukong with ghastly eyes. They flickered like phosphorescent flames. He gritted his teeth and said, "Bastard." He flicked his sleeves and left. Yi Bukong was stunned on the spot. Did I say something wrong? The seniors of the Yi clan all flicked their sleeves and left. The last one was finally stopped by Yi Bukong. "Grandfather, why?" The old man shook his head and said sadly, "You destroyed the Yi clan." Yi Bukong was stunned. The old man pointed at the amethyst book and said, "How many times have you read this book?" Yi Bukong's face changed drastically. The old man laughed coldly. "Since ancient times, who has been able to live for more than 10,000 years? Who knows what happened 10,000 years ago, or even 10,000 years ago? However, it's all recorded and memorized bit by bit. Today, you actually asked such a childish question. It's clear that you haven't read this book." He sighed. This amethyst book has recorded everything. Besides the enforcers, there's no third book in the world. Such a peerless treasure has been in your hands for 100 years, and you haven't even looked at it? Oomph. The old man snorted angrily and suddenly disappeared. Yi Bukong was shocked and lost. He was the only one left in the hall. He moved closer and slowly read from the first page, starting from the first word. Slowly, his face became paler and paler. This was an encyclopedia about Sword Master Jie that had been buried for tens of thousands of years. Yi Bukong looked up and sighed. He was extremely depressed. "So, it's all here, but can you blame me for this? This had always been the most important treasure of the Yi clan. Usually, one would have to go through more than 10 checkpoints to enter. Even the head of the Yi clan couldn't enter for no reason. Who would have thought that such an earth-shattering thing was recorded in this book?" Just as he was sighing, a shout came from afar and entered his ears. "The heaven passage will be sealed within a month. Quickly gather your men and return to the Yi clan. No one is allowed to stay outside." Yi Bukong was shocked awake. Yi Chunqiu seemed to be sighing softly in the sky. "This is the turning point of life, one by one, one by one, one by one, one by one." Yi Bukong was stunned again. A turning point of life? The Sword Master Jie has already appeared. According to what you said, the aristocratic families are definitely going to die. What's there to turn around for? However, another order came from the sky. Send a message to the other 8 aristocratic families. All the elders are to discuss important matters in the Yi clan within 3 days. Prepare to stop the Sword Master Jie. At the same time, the rulers of the aristocratic families all fell into insomnia. Everyone's minds went blank at the same time. Where should they go? No one expected the Sword Master Jie to come so quickly this time. The first Sword Master Jie spent 10 years to obtain the 4th fragment of the Sword Master Jie after a strange phenomenon appeared on the first fragment of the Sword Master Jie. The second Sword Master Jie also took 70 years. Even the 8th Master of Calamity Sword took 20 years. However, the current Master of Calamity Sword took less than 3 years. Is he a monster? All the aristocratic families started to feel uneasy. It was as if a storm was coming. In an instant, it filled the upper 3 heavens. At this moment, they received a message from the Yi clan. The 8 aristocratic families didn't do anything on the surface, but everyone who was qualified to know all this knew that their elders had already rushed to the Yi clan. The Sword Master Jie obtaining the 4th fragment of the Sword Master Jie was a matter of life and death for the aristocratic families. At the same time, the aristocratic families all sent out an order. All the members outside were to return immediately. Those who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. At the same time, the heaven enforcers. This was an ice mountain. The entire ice mountain seemed to have been hollowed out. Inside, a white light flashed. Waves of fragrant fragrance spread out in an elegant manner. Taking a closer look, there was actually a large cluster of beautiful snow lotuses every 100 feet on the ground. Each snow lotus was snow white and as big as a silver plate. Each petal seemed to be made of gold and jade, giving off a sparkling and translucent glow. They were actually huge stalks of snow lotuses that were connected together to form a tea table. This snow lotus was called the 1,000-year ice lotus. It would sprout for 100 years, sprout for 100 years, grow for 100 years, and bud for 100 years. However, it would take another 100 years for the bud to bloom. After 2,000 years, it would be as clear as jade and as tough as it was now. This was definitely a heavenly spiritual medicine. It was a sacred healing medicine. Every stalk was extremely expensive outside, and it was priceless. Who would have thought that it would only exist as a tea table here? This extravagance could be said to be earth-shattering. At the highest position, on a platform that was 1 foot above the ground, a white-robed man stood with his hands behind his back facing the door. He didn't move and seemed to be deep in thought. His black hair was like a waterfall, and his white robe was whiter than snow. His neck, wrists, ears, and other skin were all shining with a smooth luster. It was like the skin of a 17 or 18-year-old youth. His fingers were slender and delicate. It could be imagined that these 10 fingers were absolutely incomparably nimble. Whether it was holding a sharp sword or taking a life, it was all done with ease and effortlessness. His eyes were even colder than an iceberg. Although he didn't move, his body was also very thin and frail. But when he stood there, it was as if all the lights in the hall had turned into dense dark clouds that were brewing a storm in the sky. Even the extravagant decorations seemed to have turned into ordinary grass and flowers under his shadow. There was no aura of a peerless treasure. Footsteps sounded softly. People filed into this extremely luxurious ice palace. No one made a sound, but they all stood behind the ice lotus tea tables. When the 30 tea tables were all filled with people, the man who was standing with his hands behind his back finally turned around and said calmly, "Sit." Although he had turned around and there was no veil covering his face, there seemed to be a thick fog that would never disperse in front of his face, concealing his appearance within the dense fog. No one could see clearly. The Calamity Sword Master has already come into contact with the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword. The white-robed man's voice was calm and cold, without any fluctuation, joy, or anger. It was as if he was talking about something that wasn't worth making a fuss about. So, from this moment on, the aristocratic families are no longer under our control. Chapter 717. From now on, before heaven calms down, the law enforcement officers will give up on law enforcement. Heaven will enter a chaotic era of sword masters. The white-robed man's eyes were very cold as he glanced at the faces of the 30 people below. If the hall was originally peaceful and quiet, then after this sentence, it was completely frozen. Everyone was dumbfounded at the same time. 30 pairs of eyes looked at the white-robed man in disbelief. Such expressions appeared on the faces of these people. This was definitely something that could shock the whole world, because those who were qualified to stand here were at least at the 5th stage of martial saint. There were even a few supreme martial artists among them. It could be said that in the past 10,000 years, ever since the establishment of the law enforcement officers, the power of the law enforcement officers had never been as strong as this batch. But it was these super experts who could remain indifferent even when a mountain collapsed in front of them and the sky collapsed in front of them. Now, they were showing extreme shock in their lives. This was very likely to be the only time in their lives that they would experience such a thing. Their shocked expressions lasted for a breath. Then, everyone's faces returned to normal. Many of them were deep in thought, and many of them were suspicious. There were even 2 people whose eyes were filled with anger. "I object." The white-robed young man standing at the front raised his eyebrows. His eyes were burning as he took a step forward. Beside him, a beautiful woman with hair as long as the clouds smiled quietly and took a step forward to express her support. "Why do you object?" The white-robed man looked at the person who spoke coldly. He naturally knew that although this guy looked young, he was indeed an old and immortal fellow. The white-robed young man, Wuxia. This was a very feminine name. It was said that Wuxia's father was an erudite scholar at that time. At that time, he already had 3 sons and longed for a daughter. So, before she went into labor, he even named her. In the end, she was born a son. He was greatly disappointed. At that time, the wife of Wuxia's sworn brother was also about to go into labor. The 2 families agreed that if they were both daughters, they would be sisters. If they were a man and a woman, they would be husband and wife. And these two families, one was surnamed Yu and the other was surnamed Feng. Moreover, Yu Lingshue's father liked snow. The father of the Feng clan was also a learned scholar who liked wind and rain. Drunken moon listens to the snow, gentle wind listens to the rain. This was also the realm that the two great Confucian scholars pursued their entire lives. To drink with friends, to lie under the moon, to listen to the sounds of nature, as snowflakes gently drifted down. Leaning against the window, facing the wind, listening to the drizzle, heaven and earth gentle. This was a poetic sentiment that the two of them had longed for their entire lives and had pursued for their entire lives. Therefore, both parties had decided on a name before the child was born. The members of the Yu clan, regardless of gender, were all called Yu Lingxue. The Feng family, regardless of gender, would be called Feng Yuro. Now, the woman in white standing beside Yu Lingxue was like a gentle spring rain and wind. She was his wife, Feng Yuro. Both husband and wife were supreme beings. Not only did the two inherit their father's knowledge and talent, they also became a pair of sword guts and zither hearts. The Dharma Supreme had worked with the two of them for so many years, so he naturally knew that this Yu Lingxue, who was like a youth in white, was, in fact, an extremely demonic character. He had only lost once in several thousand years, and that was to Ning Tianya. That time, he had battled with Ning Tianya for 3 months, and Ning Tianya had won by one move. However, he had retreated completely unscathed. Just this terrifying cultivation alone was enough to make anyone look at him in a different light. In fact, if Feng Yuro was also present then, when the couple battled with Ning Tianya would have no choice but to flee. Lord Dharma Supreme, this doesn't seem right? Yu Lingshue's eyes narrowed into 2 sharp swords. Law enforcement officers are the rules of the Tribulation Sword Master. They control the laws of the heavens. Since when did they rule that when the Tribulation Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Tribulation Sword, he had to wash his hands of it? The Dharma Supreme snorted and said indifferently, "That was then, and this is now." Law enforcement officers are the greatest help to the Tribulation Sword Master. At the very least, they have to allow the Tribulation Sword Master to grow. The stone tablet is still standing at the back of the hall. Its divine power has yet to fade. Yu Lingxue said seriously, "Lord Dharma Supreme, are you going to go against the rules today?" When he spoke, Feng Yuro didn't say a word. She just stood quietly beside her husband, her expression still tranquil. No matter what decision her husband made, she could only support him. The white-robed Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "However, the stone tablet has also ruled that the chaotic times of the heavens will inevitably arise. As long as the Tribulation Sword Master causes chaos, we law enforcement officers can only retreat. However, the rules say that we can only wash our hands of it after the Tribulation Sword Master obtained the 4th fragment of the Tribulation Sword." Yu Lingshue's gaze was sharp as he said, "But now, from the looks of the heavens, we have only just obtained the 4th fragment." The Dharma Supreme was still indifferent. "So what? If you give up from the 4th fragment, you are undoubtedly giving up on the justice of the heavens and our original position. You want us law enforcement officers to turn from supporting the Tribulation Sword Master to opposing him?" The Dharma Supreme was silent for a while before he said, "There is no need to discuss this anymore. I have already made up my mind. Lingxue, I will talk to you later." "You are stubborn?" Yu Lingxue frowned slightly and said unhappily, "Don't forget, even the heavens cannot stop the power of the tribulation. Do you want the law enforcement officers who have been passed down for 10,000 years to be destroyed in your hands?" "That may not be so." The Dharma Supreme's voice became a little deep. "Don't forget, there is also this part in the prophecy. Tribulation becomes nothing, humans and ghosts walk the same path, the Sword Master of the heavens, heaven and earth walk the same path. So you think that the law enforcement officers will definitely be destroyed by the Tribulation Sword Master?" Yu Lingxue sneered. "You need to calm down." The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed, somewhat displeased. "No matter what, my husband will definitely not accept this order of the Dharma Supreme. The Dharma Supreme nodded slowly and said, "If that is the case, then so be it." His eyes flashed like lightning and he said solemnly, "How many others do not agree?" Everyone below looked at each other, but no one spoke. A few people's eyes shone intensely as if they were tempted, but they still lowered their heads in the end. Yu Lingxue laughed. "You all still want to continue to rule the heavens and are unwilling to take the risk of giving up power." He laughed heartily and said, "Since that's the case, there's no need for us to work together. The two of us will take our leave for now." Yu Lingxue's ice-cold eyes swept across and he took his wife's hand. Both of their figures suddenly melted like ice and snow, disappearing without a trace in this hall. They only left behind a faintly discernible sentence. Dharma Supreme, law enforcement officers are law enforcement officers. It is precisely because of the existence of the Tribulation Sword Master above the law enforcement officers that the law enforcement officers are not rulers. They are only tools, nothing more. If you do not want the law enforcement officers to overturn the ruling power, I'm afraid there will be a day when it will be too late for regrets. I only hope that the law enforcement officers will not become a place where people fight for power and profit. You are on your own." His voice kept echoing in the hall, but everyone knew that Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were already thousands of miles away. "That's good too." The Dharma Supreme's eyes shone. After a long time, he sighed softly and said, "Both of you, you are on your own too." His eyes flashed sharply, and then he lowered his gaze, seemingly indifferent to Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro's departure. He said, "Act according to my orders immediately." "Deputy, you stay for a while." "Yes, Moon Breeze, understood. I will do it right away." Not long after, with a sudden sound, the entire ice peak between heaven and earth suddenly disappeared. It seemed to have melted into the air. The strong fragrance of ice lotus floated in the air, not dissipating for a long time, turning into spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Duke Yu followed behind the Li clan and actually could not find them. The various clans and law enforcement officers were all hurrying along together, and they were not far from each other, only a few hundred feet apart. The security was tight. And the Li clan was actually walking behind the law enforcement officers. The other clans were all monitoring the Li clan's movements. And the law enforcement officers were monitoring the movements of everyone in the clans. Everything was linked together. Furthermore, Duke Yu discovered something strange, and that was, it seemed like everyone in the clans had other tasks on their shoulders. Along the way, everyone was distracted, but they had no choice but to hurry back. This was because the law enforcement officers did not allow them to act rashly. This way, Duke Yu's chances of completing his mission will be even lower. Seeing that they were about to reach the entrance of the upper and lower heavens, Duke Yu was very anxious. Could it be that I can't complete such a simple task? The other clans were also helpless. These law enforcement officers are following us like ghosts. How can we complete the task given by our clans? Only Dong Wuxiang and the other two who were following the law enforcement officers were excited. We are about to enter the upper three heavens. Finally, Duke Yu could not take it anymore and decided to take the risk. Li Xiong too was on Li Ba Tian's back the whole time and did not leave for even a moment. Li Ba Tian had even rejected the help of two of his guards. This was because he knew that his current cultivation was not as good as these two experts of his clan. If there was any danger, with Dong Wuxiang on their backs, their fighting strength would be greatly reduced. This seemingly arrogant and despotic Duke Yu was very meticulous. There was no doubt about it. Duke Yu could not find an opportunity, and he could not take it anymore. Finally, he decided to take action. Suddenly, the heavens and earth shook, and the entire world was filled with sword light. In the sky, a huge character flashed in front of them. Everyone changed at the same time. They all stood still and looked up at the sky, deep in thought. In the next moment, everyone floated up to the treetops and looked into the distance. Li Ba Tian also wanted to jump up and take a look, but just as he was about to leap, a low voice said, "Wait." Li Ba Tian and the other two were stunned, and they turned around. They saw a black-clothed masked person suddenly appear 30 feet in front of them like a ghost. His eyes were quietly looking at Li Xiongtu, who was on Li Ba Tian's back. Chapter 7:18. The fresh wounds on Li Xiongtu's body slowly turned into scars at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bit by bit they formed scars. Soon, the scars turned from red to dark red before turning black. Then, they started to wrinkle, everyone's eyes widened. They were dumbfounded. Was this the effect of a pill? However, the most shocking thing was yet to come. Li Xiongtu said unconsciously, "It's so itchy." He couldn't help but scratch, rustle, rustle, rustle. Wherever he scratched, the scars would fall off like flour, revealing the fresh skin underneath. Wherever he didn't scratch, the scars started to dry up and fall off. In an instant, Li Xiongtu's body became as smooth as a newborn baby's. It was white with a tinge of red. Everyone's jaws dropped to the floor. Everyone stared at Li Xiongtu's body in a daze. They didn't even blink. There was only one shocking voice in their hearts that kept repeating, "Calamity Sword Master. Heavy pill. Calamity Sword Master. Heavy pill." Li Batan almost vomited blood. "Dem, it's good enough that you've recovered. Why did you have to do a reality show in front of everyone? How am I going to end this?" What he didn't know was that the heavy pill that Chu Yang had taken out had additional ingredients. Not only was there a hallucinogenic drug, but there was also a drug that made his entire body itch. There was even a drug that made him feel hot all over. With these three ingredients working at the same time, even if Li Xiongtu was the most resilient person in the world, he wouldn't be able to take it. Finally, the feeling in his body dissipated. Li Xiongtu also woke up. He moved his body strangely and asked in confusion, "I've recovered? I've recovered?" Li Batian was about to cry, "Brother, put on your clothes." Apart from the Li clan, the other 24 pairs of eyes from the other 8 clans all focused on Li Xiongtu's day. Their gazes were complicated, and they kept flashing. One of the calamities. One of the future ruling clans of the upper 3 heavens. It's actually this person? How can I let the Li clan gain such a huge advantage? However, on the surface, no one made a sound. In fact, they didn't even mention the words, "Calamity Swordmaster." Everyone's heart was filled with passion. Even a person like Li Xiongtu was overwhelmed by this unexpected favor. Was this still the father-in-law of the great ruling family? When did he become so approachable? But in their hearts, all of them were cursing inwardly. With such an obvious target, if we let you, one of the calamities, live to dominate the heavens, then we really don't need to be human anymore. What's more, with your current strength, you're even weaker than trash. Everyone silently calculated in their hearts. The enforcer's eyes flashed with shock. Then he said a few words and everyone continued on their way. A few days later, all the major clans finally received the news. All members who were outside were to return to their clans as soon as possible. The heavenly layer world was about to be sealed. Everyone was shocked. They quickened their pace and rushed into the upper 3 heavens. Li Ba Tian continuously sent out emergency requests for help. When they reached the upper 3 heavens, the Li clan had already gathered 12 martial saints to escort them. The group of people rushed back to the Li clan. Li Ba Tian finally felt relieved. Damn it, we're finally safe. But, in the eyes of the other clans, everyone knew what was going on. Everyone wore cold smiles on their faces as they bade farewell and left. This matter must be reported to the clan as soon as possible. Everyone thought fiercely. The Li clan? They actually want to continue? What the hell? Chu Yang sank to the bottom of the lake of despair like a rock. At this moment, he even had a feeling that he was safe and relaxed. In this warm water, he felt warm. It was as if he had returned to his mother's embrace. It was full of comfort and contentment. He didn't feel any danger at all. His body kept sinking. The water in the lake of despair didn't seem to have any buoyancy. Chu Yang opened his eyes and looked at the lake water that surrounded him. He felt that something was wrong. But he couldn't tell what was wrong. After a long while, he remembered. There were no fish or prawns in this water. There weren't any living creatures. Even the corpses that had been thrown down had disappeared. The lake water was clean and transparent. There weren't any impurities. Furthermore, Chu Yang didn't feel suffocated in this lake water at all. Everything felt as if he was outside in broad daylight. The sword point, the sword edge, and the sword blade, the three parts of the broken sword, emitted a bright light. They surrounded and guarded Chu Yang as they floated downwards. Everything was so calm. Chu Yang wanted to recall the situation when he had obtained the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword in his previous life. But he suddenly realized that he couldn't remember. It was as if this calm and gentle lake water had cut off his memories of his previous life. After sinking for a long time, Chu Yang finally felt that he had stepped on something. He looked down and realized that it was a rock that was as white as jade. Furthermore, as far as he could see, the entire bottom of the lake was filled with rocks like this. Every rock was squarish and huge. They had a radius of more than 100 feet. In the center of every rock, there was a small dark red hole. Countless hot bubbles came out from this dark red hole. It warmed up the entire lake. Chu Yang stood on this white jade-like rock. He felt that the soles of his feet were extremely warm. There wasn't any burning sensation at all. Looking around, he couldn't help but be amazed. Who was it that had set up such an uncanny workmanship at the bottom of the lake? Suddenly, there was a faintly discernible movement in front of him. The sword tip of the Calamity Sword became excited. With a flash of light, it rushed towards the place where the movement came from. The sword edge and sword edge followed closely behind. Chu Yang's heart moved. He followed closely behind. He thought, could it be that the sword spirit had guessed wrongly? What danger is there? Although he thought so, Chu Yang didn't let down his guard at all. After floating for thousands of feet, a hole with white light appeared in front of him. It was at the bottom of the lake. It still led straight underground. This hole emitted a gentle white light and called out to him. It seemed to be saying to Chu Yang, "Come, come. Let me devour you." Chu Yang clearly felt that there was something that he had desired for his entire life inside. Without any hesitation, Chu Yang threw himself into it. He threw himself into a place called Lu Jing. But Chu Yang would never have thought that he would come to such a place. Chapter 719. Chu Yang threw himself into the cave without hesitation. The moment his body disappeared into the cave, Chu Yang felt his vision blur. The blazing white light in front of him turned into darkness. After taking a few steps forward, he saw a faint light in front of him. Chu Yang frowned and walked forward step by step. 7 feet ahead, Chu Yang took a step forward. A figure flashed in front of him and a person appeared in front of him. "GMO!" Chu Yang exclaimed, "Why are you here?" The person who appeared in front of him was GMO. He grinned and raised his eyebrows mischievously. "Boss, you didn't expect this, right?" "Indeed, I didn't expect this." Chu Yang smiled bitterly and shook his head. He originally suspected that it was an illusion, but the moment his hands touched GMO, he felt a familiar and real touch. He knew that this was not an illusion. "Hee, boss, Missouri Tianji knew that you would come here to take risks. So, when you were lying in the tent, we came down first." GMO grinned. He was very happy. "Boss, don't hide such things from us in the future. We are brothers. How can you take risks alone?" GMO laughed. "If we don't live and die together, how can we be brothers?" "Boss, you are too arrogant." Chu Yang said shamefully, "It's my fault. I didn't want you to worry about me." Halfway through, he suddenly realized, "Aren't you all here? Where are the others?" GMO smiled. "Of course, they are in front." He took a step forward and held Chu Yang's hand. "Boss, I will bring you to them." "Pa." The two of them walked forward holding hands. Chu Yang felt that his heart was filled with happiness at this moment. This bunch of people. He didn't know if he was satisfied or blaming them, but he muttered something. Another person came out in front. It was Luo Kadi. "Whoa, boss, you didn't expect this, right?" Luo Kadi shouted excitedly and pounced over with bared fangs. Chu Yang's heart was filled with warmth. He scolded with a smile, "You little wolf. Humph, you actually lied to me. See how I will deal with you when we get back." Luo Kadi laughed happily as he got closer and closer. Suddenly, Chu Yang's pupils shrank, and he shouted, Be careful. Because he was horrified to discover that a blazing sword light had appeared behind Luo Kudi. A sword brimming with the aura of death was flying towards Luo Kudi's back at lightning speed. This sword was soundless, and even the water flow did not change at all. But it was so sinister that it made Chu Yang feel despair. Luo Kudi's face was still filled with the joy of being with his brothers, and the joy of finally being able to help Chu Yang. He did not react to Chu Yang's roar at all, and asked in confusion, "What?" Blood splattered everywhere. Chu Yang roared in heartache. He felt as if his heart had suddenly shattered. Luo Kudi was already 20 feet away from him, but his body was forever frozen in place. The tip of a sword suddenly emerged from Luo Kudi's mouth. Blood dripped from the tip of the sword and spread across the water. This sword strike was so vicious that it was precisely aimed at Luo Kudi's heart. Even if Chu Yang had 10,000 complete heavy pills, he would not be able to save Luo Kudi. Luo Kudi still had a smile on his face, but it had already turned into ashes. Fresh blood continued to gush out from his chest. He barely managed to control himself, and he coughed and laughed. "Awoo, I originally wanted to help boss, but I didn't expect that I would only make boss sad. I'm really sorry about this." "Little wolf." Chu Yang roared and rushed forward. The tip of the sword in Luo Kudi's mouth moved, and it disappeared with a whoosh. "Don't pull out the sword. Don't pull it out." Chu Yang roared in heartache, and he even pleaded. He knew that if the tip of the sword was pulled out, Luo Kudi's last bit of life would also be taken away. But the sword was still pulled out, and it disappeared. Luo Kudi's body swayed, and he finally fell forward. Chu Yang let out a heart-wrenching scream, and he rushed forward, hugging Luo Kudi. Luo Kudi's body trembled in his embrace. He tried his best to open his eyes, and he looked at Chu Yang. His face was full of longing and regret, but his eyes finally became calm. He even moved his lips, and a smile appeared on his face. He murmured, "Boss, I'm sorry. I went back on my words. If there's a next life, I will definitely accompany you. Traversing the heavens." "Brother!" Chu Yang hugged Luo Kudi tightly, and his whole body trembled. His tears fell like rain, and he choked, "Don't go." Luo Kudi looked at him in a daze, and he finally squeezed out a smile and said, "Oh, boss, don't cry. I'll lose face if I have a crying boss." He raised his hand, as if he wanted to wipe away the tears on Chu Yang's face. But his hand was only halfway, and he suddenly dropped it. His eyes were filled with regret, and he was deeply worried. "Little wolf." Chu Yang roared towards the sky, and a mouthful of scarlet blood spurted out. He stared with his eyes wide open, and the corners of his eyes were already cracked. He looked at the place where the fatal blow came from with hatred. There was no one there. "Come out." Chu Yang roared furiously. "Who are you? Fuck your 8 generations of ancestors. Come out and die. Come out and die." Chu Yang roared crazily, and his eyes were red. Chu Yang had killed people before, and he had also scolded people before. But he had never scolded his relatives like this before. But this time, he could no longer hold back. The water opposite him was calm. There was no movement at all. If Luo Kudi's body was not clearly in Chu Yang's arms, Chu Yang would almost think that this was a dream. "Little wolf!" GMO screamed sharply, and rushed over while crying crazily, "Little wolf! Little wolf! Little wolf, what happened to you? Wake up! Wake up!" Caressing Luo Kudi's cold face, and looking at Luo Kudi's apologetic eyes, GMO finally burst into tears. "Don't scare me, don't scare me." Chu Yang's facial muscles spasmed crazily, and his eyes shot out a terrifying light. He picked up Luo Kudi's body, and slowly walked forward. "Little wolf, I want you to see with your own eyes that I will avenge you." Chu Yang murmured, and slowly walked forward with Luo Kudi's body in his arms. His whole body was already prepared for battle. "Boss!" Ji-Mo's cry came from behind, and Chu Yang's whole body shook. There was no sadness in Ji-Mo's cry, only reluctance, surprise, and a touch of disbelief. Chu Yang turned around like a whirlwind. Suddenly, there was a wild cry, and 2 cries, and blood spurted out continuously. Two shining swords were being pulled out of Ji-mo's body from both sides. The swords flashed and blood was everywhere. After a section was pulled out, the blood dissipated in the water. Ji-mo's mouth was constantly bleeding, but his two hands were tightly grasping the sword that was being pulled out from the left side of his body. The sword's edge. Blood came out from his hand that was holding the sword's edge. He struggled and his eyes were anxious. "Boss, don't worry about me, Gu. Gu and the others are still in front. You go quickly, there may be danger." He took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. "I am with little wolf, we are not afraid. Boss, you go quickly." At this moment, the sword turned with a whoosh, and Ji-mo's 10 fingers fell off neatly. The sword's edge also spun a circle in his heart. Two silhouettes flashed like illusions, letting out sinister sneers as they appeared and disappeared in the next moment. Chu Yang did not have time to chase after them. In his heart that was almost numb from grief, there was only a large amount of blood. He could not think of anything else. Fresh blood spread in the water. Ji-mo's face convulsed, and this was the last pain of his life. But he did not scream and only smiled. "Boss, care about the living, not the dead. They're leaving. You guys take care." Then, his body trembled, and the anxiety and worry in his eyes suddenly froze. His eyes were still wide open, and they were still flashing with urging, "Go quickly. They are in danger. They need you. Brother, I beg of you." Chu Yang let out a long and crazy howl, as if his heart had been cut to pieces. His heart became ice cold. Two brothers had become corpses in front of him. Just a moment ago, they were still laughing and joking with him. But in the blink of an eye, they were gone from this world. Even his last request was so heart-wrenching. The first meeting in the lower three heavens, the vigorous training, the grievance of being forced to wash socks, the high spirits of the ranking competition, the dominance of the lower three heavens, and the ambition of the upper three heavens were all gone. Everything was gone. "Oh, dog ant. I am so happy today." This was Ji-mo's voice, and he was roaring continuously after breaking through. "Awoo, awoo, is it finally my turn?" This was Luo Kadi, who was unwilling to be left out before the big battle. Chu Yang could even clearly remember the burning fighting spirit on Luo Kadi's face at that time. "Brother!" Chu Yang closed his eyes, and two streams of tears fell silently. Luo Kadi's body slipped from his hands silently, and he lay down beside GMO. Chu Yang's eyes were full of tears. He forced himself not to look at the corpses of his two brothers, but he could not help but look again. Then he rushed out furiously and indignantly. GMO was right. Gu Duxing and the rest were still in front, and there were still other brothers. They might have encountered danger. It might even be more dangerous than here. Care about living, not caring about death. This sentence was very true. However, such a simple choice was simply too cruel for the current him. It was too cruel. Chu Yang rushed forward crazily. In front of him, banging sounds could be heard continuously. Along with angry roars and shouts, a few figures were crazily attacking each other in this area of water. Chu Yang's spirit was lifted. Gu Duxing was not dead. The other brothers were still here. He rushed forward hurriedly. He was afraid that if he was a step late, what awaited him would be a new tragedy. The hazy scene suddenly brightened, and a large empty space appeared in front of him. Gu Duxing's face was cold and serious, and his sword was like a dragon. Ao Xieyun's sword was like a cold star. Xie Danqiong's flowers were dancing, and Mo Tianji's clothes were fluttering. Tan Tan and Xie Danfeng were attacking together. They were each fighting crazily with a guy whose clothes were almost the same as the water. Chu Yang approached like a whirlwind. He took a look at the ranking list, and he was ranked 10th in the monthly votes. He was about to fall out of the top 10. Ha! Chapter 720. Yang, you've kept me in the dark for so long. Chu Feiling's tone was slightly reproachful, but most of it was relief. Fortunately, I finally reacted and rushed here. Child, you must be strong. Chu Yang looked at him blankly and said as if he was in a dream, Double that? The beautiful woman was already sobbing. She looked at Chu Yang closely. Her eyes were full of guilt and heartache. Child, you've suffered? You are? Chu Yang felt something in his heart, but he still couldn't believe it. This is your mother. Chu Feiling sighed. Do you know that once we confirmed your news, we couldn't sit still anymore? Your mother insisted on coming with me. Child, put down your sword. Don't do anything stupid. Don't tell me that you want your mother to lose you forever again after losing you for 18 years and finally being able to see you again after losing you for 18 years? How can your mother bear that? Chu Feiling said sadly. My mother? Chu Yang opened his mouth. He only felt that his soul, which had been broken into pieces, exploded again and disintegrated again. In an instant he saw stars. Finally, he couldn't bear it anymore. His body swayed and he fainted. He only felt that he had fallen into a gentle and loving embrace. This smell, this feeling, it was so lingering and intoxicating. Chu Yang cried loudly after he fainted. He thought that he had changed his fate, but he didn't expect it to become even crueler. All of his brothers were miserable in front of him, and he could only look on helplessly. This blow to Chu Yang was worse than Mo Qingwu's virginity in his previous life. His heart was already in despair, but at this moment, his parents came to his side. The warm embrace of his mother, which he had never tasted before, embraced him so warmly, Chu Yang was at a loss. What should he do? He could only faint. Chu Yang was awakened by a tremor. When he woke up, he found himself in his mother's arms. And his body was constantly being turned. It was actually a high-speed movement. Could it be? Chu Yang opened his eyes and found that Chu Feiling and his mother were besieged. All around, there were masked men in black. How could this be? Chu Feiling's body was already covered with wounds so deep that his bones could be seen. Mother's body was also bleeding. Chu Yang was shocked. He flipped over and broke free. Then he pulled out his sword. Ha! Chu Feiling! We were able to force you and your wife into a corner 18 years ago, and today, we can kill your entire family here. The leader of the masked men laughed. This is your son, right? Ha! What a pity. We've just reunited, and now we're going to have our whole family together. I express my deepest regret. Another person laughed wildly. Chu Feiling and his wife gritted their teeth and frantically blocked the other party's attacks. However, they were defeated. Their cultivations were simply not on the same level as the other party. Chu Yang roared and attacked with his sword. However, Chu Feiling and his wife suddenly grabbed him at the same time. Yang, leave quickly. Chu Yang roared madly. How could he leave at this time? Let's go. Don't let the two of us die. Mother looked at Chu Yang with sad eyes. 18 years ago, we were chased by these people, so we had no choice but to separate you from us. I didn't expect that today. She looked at her son longingly. Her eyes were full of reluctance and love. Child, leave. You're alive, and our greatest hope. Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly let out a muffled groan. The shining tip of a sword protruded from her chest. She let out a muffled groan. She exerted force in her hand, and Chu Feiling exerted force at the same time. They threw Chu Yang's body far away. The bodies of the husband and wife were instantly submerged in a sea of swords and sabers. Chu Yang's body was flying backward, but his spirit had already collapsed. His mother's eyes were still looking at him lovingly. Until she was completely submerged in the sea of swords and sabers. No. Chu Yang roared. He only felt that his spirit was also convulsing. Don't be so cruel. I was in my mother's arms for less than 15 minutes. It's actually an eternal separation again? Chu Yang could feel that his soul was gradually shattering. His consciousness was slowly collapsing. In the distance, the group of men in black had already stopped. At their feet, two bloodied bodies lay motionless. Chu Yang's heart and soul were completely shattered. That little one is still alive. Kill him. The men in black roared and chased after Chu Yang. Chu Yang roared and drew his sword to meet them. He only thought about us, only thought about destruction. He only thought of madness. He also knew that his parents wanted him to escape and live on. This was their last wish. He really shouldn't risk his life at this time. But he had already experienced the tragedy of his brothers, and now he saw his parents in front of him. Chu Yang had already collapsed. He didn't care about any consequences at all. He had nothing left to live for. Both sides were about to come into contact. The men in black surrounded him with ferocious gazes from all directions. Chu Yang's eyes were crazed. He roared and rushed forward. At this moment, "Don't hurt my brother Chu Yang." A rainbow shadow fell from the sky. A dreamlike saber appeared in front of Chu Yang. With two clangs, it cut the two swords into two. A graceful figure in red landed lightly in front of him. A little girl appeared in front of him. Yes, compared to when they parted, Jianghu had obviously grown a lot taller. At this moment, a pair of bright and beautiful eyes were looking at him worriedly. "Little Wu," Chu Yang moaned, as if crying and laughing at the same time. "Brother Chu Yang, are you okay?" Jianghu rushed toward him. "You really shouldn't have come." Chu Yang spat out another mouthful of blood. He felt powerless. Grief, despair, and anxiety. Jianghu rushing over now, wasn't it the same as sending herself to death? "Where are your two masters?" Chu Yang's mind flashed. If Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing were here, they would definitely save Jianghu's life. "They didn't come." Jianghu pouted and said, "They came back to visit family this time. They met second brother at the foot of the mountain. They came up to find you and asked me to wait by the lake. I waited for a while, but they didn't come up, so I came down too." She blinked. "Where are second brother and the rest?" Chu Yang's heart was in pain. He closed his eyes in pain and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. "Go quickly." But the black-clothed men had already surrounded him. Sabers and swords were coming down together. Chu Yang's body was instantly enveloped in a sea of saber light and sword shadows. Jianghu's shrill screams suddenly rushed in madly. Her petite body slammed into Chu Yang's body and actually knocked Chu Yang's body out. The saber light was like a waterfall. In an instant, Jianghu's body bloomed with a brilliant bloody light. Chu Yang wanted to scream, but he was in so much pain that he couldn't make a sound. Jianghu's petite figure trembled in the blood. Her eyes were full of pain. Finally, she slowly fell into Chu Yang's arms and looked at him affectionately. "Brother Chu Yang, you're hugging me, I am so happy." She took 2 quick breaths. Her eyes shone brightly, as if the flame of life was beating for the last time. "Brother Chu Yang, I originally wanted to wait for me to grow up and marry you, but I can't grow up anymore, little Wu." Chu Yang looked at Jianghu numbly. Suddenly, he felt like his head was exploding. With a loud bang, all his thoughts, all his memories, all his experiences, all his everything, all turned into pieces. He already couldn't feel pain, sadness, regret, can't feel anything. Jianghu looked at him deeply and said miserably, "Brother Chu Yang, hug me, I'm so cold." Chu Yang's tears fell like rain. He hugged this petite body tightly, wishing that he could rub her into his body. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. He wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He only felt that his chest was so stuffy that he couldn't breathe. At any time, his chest would explode. Jianghu's breathing gradually weakened. Her lotus-like arms that were tightly hugging Chu Yang tightened, and then loosened. She used up the last of her strength to tighten her arms, and then loosened them again. She swayed in the air and a blissful smile suddenly appeared on her face. She blushed and murmured, "I'm so happy, and I can't bear to—" "Brother Chu Yang, if there's a next life, how good would it be? I'll definitely give birth to a lot of children for you, and be the best wife for you." Her voice suddenly stopped. Jianghu's eyes slowly closed. She fell into a deep sleep in Chu Yang's arms. Her fan-like eyelashes gently covered her eyelids, but she wouldn't open them again. Chu Yang knelt down in a daze. He didn't feel anything. "In my previous life, you were in my arms, and you closed your eyes in my arms. In this life, you slept in my arms for me again. I still see you close your eyes with my own eyes. I still see you in my arms with my own eyes. I feel your body temperature gradually turning cold. I still can't do anything. I still can't do anything. Why? Why? My brother. My parents. My lover. Chu Yang hugged Imo Qingwu and roared at the sky unconsciously. His heart was gone, his soul was already illusory, his spirit shattered, his consciousness exploded instantly, his spirit was shattering bit by bit. His spirit that was originally damaged at this moment was like a 1,000-mile river dike with a gap opened. The flood rushed out from the gap, and this majestic river dike gap became more and more and more and more. In his mind, cracks gradually appeared in the tribulation space. Chu Yang stood quietly in a daze. His past flashed through his mind. The corners of his mouth curled up into a sad and bewildered smile. It's over. There's no other shore in the lake of despair. There's indeed no other shore. Brothers. Du Xing, Tianji, Himo, Little Wolf, Lover, Qingwu. Qingwu father, Chu failing father. Mother Chu Yang's heart suddenly shook crazily. He suddenly remembered, I only know my father's name. What's my mother's name? Chu Yang's body stiffened. I don't have a nickname. When master calls me, he always calls me by my full name and surname. My only nickname is Ichi, which Tan Tan jokingly calls me, but my parents call me Yang Yang. Why do they call me Yang Yang? Meng Charon's indifferent eyes appeared in front of Chu Yang. My lover is called Yi Chuchen. Chuchen Chu Yang. So you're called Chu Yang? So you're called Chu Yang? So, you're called Chu Yang? Chapter 721. Chu Fei Ling and Yang Ruolan were running forward as fast as they could. Now, they were less than 1,000 miles away from the Heavenly Sword Peak and the Lake of Despair. The husband and wife were burning with anxiety, but when they reached this place, they didn't have any strength left in their bodies. Their legs seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and they couldn't move anymore. They could only rest for now. In the middle of the night, Yang Ruolan suddenly screamed and woke up from her dream. She was drenched in cold sweat, and her forehead was sweating like rain. What's wrong? Chu Fei Ling was meditating to recover his elemental energy. He had overdrawn it in the past few days. This martial monarch also felt the fatigue in his soul. I suddenly saw our son. Yang Ruolan stared blankly. She was still in shock and her face was pale. I saw our son coming to bid farewell to me, covered in blood. Her eyes were full of panic. Fei Ling, Chu Yang, will our son be okay? You're just saying things out of concern. He's with his brothers. Furthermore, there are many experts in the alliance. How can anything happen to him? Chu Fei Ling comforted her. But I'm always anxious. I feel that something bad has happened. Yang Ruolan frowned. My heart is in my throat. She hurriedly put on her clothes and got off the bed. She paced around the tent, feeling more and more anxious. Her heart had completely lost its calmness. She thought about it, and all she had was a bad premonition and an ominous prediction. For the entire second half of the night, Yang Ruolan paced around the tent. She was anxious and panting. When the sky just brightened, she pulled Chu Fei Ling up. Let's go. The pitiful Chu Fei Ling had only recovered half of his energy before he was pulled up to run. If you delay my meeting with our son, I'll skin you alive. Yang Ruolan was aggressive, and her eyes were glowing. The couple ran all the way. This place was already deserted, and there weren't many fat sheep to rob. At noon, they finally met people from the Ao clan. They were coming down from the Heavenly Sword Peak. Their banners were waving, and their men were strong. It was obvious that they had won the battle. Chu Fei Ling stepped forward to stop them. After inquiring about the situation, he learned that Chu Yang's side had won. His wife and her husband immediately felt relieved. The two of them did not dare to reveal their identities. They only asked a question and claimed to be Chu Yang's elders. Ao Tianxing naturally treated them with courtesy and eagerly received them. He told Chu Yang that they were still on the mountain. Yang Ruolan was overjoyed. She watched the Ao clan and the other big clans descend the mountain. Then, the husband and wife went all the way up the mountain, Yang Ruolan's heart still felt heavy even though she had obtained the exact information. In fact, it was so heavy that she couldn't breathe. If he couldn't see his son with his own eyes, he couldn't be at ease. Upper three heavens. Jianghu suddenly woke up from the warm jade bed with a start. She shouted loudly, "Brother Chu Yang!" Suddenly, her whole body was drenched in cold sweat, and her eyes were staring straight ahead. His entire body began to tremble. In the lower three heavens, Tai Badin was currently holding Tai Yang in her arms as she read through memorials in the imperial study. The child had already fallen asleep in her arms. However, Tai Badin was in the midst of reviewing when her heart suddenly trembled. Her brush landed on the memorial with a loud smack, leaving an eye-catching mark on it. All of a sudden, his mind was in a mess, and his heart tightened. Her whole body trembled, as if the cold wind had made her feel cold all over. She couldn't help but walk quietly to the window. Looking at the dark night outside, her brows were tightly knitted. What happened? Chu Yang, was it you? If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Chu Yang desperately wanted to wake up. The sudden appearance of Meng Charon's eyes in his heart allowed him to recover a little bit of his consciousness. Perhaps, this was also his only chance to be clear-headed in this calamity. Therefore, Chu Yang was like a drowning person who suddenly grabbed onto a straw. No matter what, I won't let go. Even if it's confirmed in the end that everything here is true, I won't let go. I don't believe it either. Even if this is the truth, I won't accept it. The stubbornness, persistence, and tenacity of his previous life helped him to the greatest extent at this moment. Then, he forced himself to shift his mind away from the sadness and forced himself to start thinking. Or perhaps, even he himself didn't realize it. Ever since he stepped into this place, he had lost the ability to think. He could only watch and listen, but his heart didn't think at all. It was as if his heart could only accept what he saw and heard, but he couldn't make a single decision. But now, he finally started to think. From every bit of it, he started to struggle. He started to save himself. Chu Yang silently said to himself, "This is my last chance. If I can't hold on, my soul will be destroyed. Therefore I must hold on. Even if my brothers die, my parents die, and Jianghu die, as long as I'm here, I will think of a way to revive them. I won't give up. Because there are so many emotions, so many unforgettable memories, so many regrets that I can't give up. Hold on. Chu Yang." Chu Yang roared and stabbed the sword into his thigh muscles. Then he used his hand to fiercely twist the sword. The blade of the sword moved back and forth in his muscles, giving him the deepest and most painful pain. This allowed him to maintain a trace of consciousness that was difficult to come by. He tried his best to clench his teeth and force back his tears. He was thinking. He tried his best to think. Impossible. Who was Mo Tianji? Even if he understood his feelings, how could he allow his brothers to participate in this kind of tribulation for the sword master? Wouldn't that be messing up his mind? Moreover, his divination had already given the prophecy of heavenly secrets in chaos, sword heartbroken, lake of despair, no other shore. Therefore, Mo Tianji definitely wouldn't do such a thing. But if Mo Tianji didn't agree, other than Gu Duxing, no one else could come. Therefore, this must be fake. If it was impossible for Mo Tianji to bring his brothers here, it was still possible. But it was impossible for Chu Failing and Chu Yang to suddenly come here. How would they know that he was here? What was his mother's name? That feeling was real, but why couldn't he remember his mother's appearance at all? He had clearly just seen her. Who was the one who gave herself the nickname Yang Yang? As for Mo Jianghu, it was even more impossible. Because everyone knew how much Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing treasured Mo Jianghu. How could they let a little girl like her travel 3 heavens and thousands of miles to visit her family? And she even coincidentally met Mo Tianji. What kind of coincidence was this to be able to do it? Chu Yang reminded himself over and over again, or rather he was numbing himself over and over again. Don't panic. Don't panic. This must be fake. This is an illusion. This is the 4th stage of the tribulation for the sword master. and also the most serious test. It was also the place where the sword spirit repeatedly said that his soul would be destroyed. And his soul was almost destroyed just now. The only thing he could rely on now was himself. He tried his best to break out of this path, but he kept feeling that something was missing. Not only did this feeling not break out, but it became more and more real. The part of his soul that was missing after being possessed by the sword spirit was like a moat, blocking his thoughts. He already knew that this was fake, but he sadly realized that he couldn't go back. Chapter 722. Beside the Lake of Despair, Chu Yang's tent. Mo Tianji, Gu Du Xing, GMO, Luo Kadi, Ao Xie Yun, Xie Dan Qiong, Tan Tan, Xie Dan Feng, Huyan Ao, and the rest were all present. Everyone had a worried look on their faces. Since Mo Tianji had guessed Chu Yang's intention, how could he let Chu Yang take the risk alone? Hence, after he led his brothers down the mountain, he immediately gave a secret order to gather them. Then, when night fell, he secretly returned to the Heavenly Sword Peak and hid in the snow. Then, everyone saw the strange phenomenon in the sky and saw Chu Yang jump into the lake of despair like a moth to a flame. This scene made everyone feel as if their hearts had been struck by a sledgehammer. GMO and Luo Kadi were extremely shocked. They opened their mouths to scream, but Gu Du Xing and Mo Tianji covered their mouths tightly. The two of them struggled with all their might, but they couldn't get out. When they could finally open their mouths, Chu Yang's body was already in the lake. "What are you doing?" GMO was furious. "Why are you stopping me?" Luo Kadi jumped up. "Didn't you see that boss jumped in? A pair of bastards." Gu Du Xing shouted angrily. "Sit properly. This is his battle alone." Mo Tianji looked at the place where Chu Yang jumped in and said slowly, "He won't drown if he goes down. But if we go down, we'll definitely die." "Why won't he drown?" Luo Kadi stretched his neck. "Because his name is Chu Yang. He's not a stupid pig called Luo Kadi." Mo Tianji said coldly, "The only thing we can do is to believe in him. Love this place and wait for him to come up." Mo Tianji made the final decision. "If anyone wants to act rashly and ruin boss's plan, you can leave now. Then you can leave now." The brothers were silent. Tan Tan kept his head down. When he saw the word "come" in the sky, he fell into deep thought. He didn't move for a long time. Xie Dan Feng kept him company quietly. It was already midnight. The lake of despair was as calm as a mirror. However, a strange and dense aura suddenly appeared in the air. Everyone who had already entered a meditative state felt at the same time, as if something was about to happen. Everyone's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable feeling. It was as if a crisis was about to befall them. It was as if something important was slowly leaving. Teranji opened his eyes in horror and looked worriedly at the calm waters of the lake of death. He thought to himself, "Chu Yang, you must come back." All of a sudden, a tornado appeared in the sky and came crashing down. Chu Yang was at his wits' end now. Other than trying his best to keep himself awake, thinking about it over and over again, denying it over and over again, and verifying it over and over again, there was nothing else he could do. However, at this moment, his heart finally calmed down. This was because he already knew that everything he had just experienced was fake. It was all an illusion. Although the illusion was so realistic that he almost couldn't extricate himself from it, he still understood in the end. The most important thing now was to find a way to return to reality from this illusory realm. Therefore, Chu Yang was anxious and frustrated for a while. Then, he forced himself to calm down. He had already figured out where his flaw was. Holy shit! This was the final loss that he had caused by letting the sword spirit take control of his body. Although he had survived the most dangerous moment, as long as his god was incomplete, he probably couldn't get out. This point was no different from the total annihilation of the gods. However, he was happy in his heart. As long as they didn't die, it was fine. "You're still stubborn." A sigh seemed to sound from the depths of his heart. Chu Yang opened his eyes and vaguely saw a white light in the water in front of him. Then, an illusory figure suddenly appeared from a different dimension and floated over. Even when it was in front of Chu Yang still couldn't see the figure's face clearly. It's just an illusory figure, but it's real here. Who are you? Chu Yang asked calmly. The figure chuckled. Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I can get you out. Get out? Chu Yang was shocked. Then he calmed down. What price do I have to pay to get out? The figure smiled. You're smart. Chu Yang snorted. Nonsense. If you're not here to take advantage of me, what are you here for? There's no free lunch in the world. Tribulation Sword Master. The figure sat down in front of Chu Yang patiently. Do you know what a Tribulation Sword Master is? How can one become a Tribulation Sword Master? Chu Yang said calmly, I'll wait for your explanation. Do you know why you can't get out? The figure said calmly, the sword spirit must have told you that you're missing a piece of your god. Therefore, in this fourth fragment, your body and soul will be destroyed. Is that so? Chu Yang didn't speak. I want to tell you. You're wrong. The figure shouted. Chu Yang looked up at him. Your god isn't missing at all. It's just that it was occupied by the sword spirit for a while and lost its original divine sense. However, you'll get this part back sooner or later. Therefore, it's not a loss. Therefore, you can't get out and your body and soul will be destroyed. It's not because of your god. The figure said slowly. What's the reason then? Chu Yang frowned. It's because you can't let it go. The figure seemed to be smiling gently. As long as you let it go, you can get out anytime. Can't let it go? Chu Yang muttered to himself. Tribulation Sword Master is a mysterious existence. He can't be emotionless. Because if he's emotionless, he won't get tribulation. He won't be able to gather all the pillars of the continent. However, he can't be emotionless. Because if he is, he won't be able to let it go. Similarly, he won't be able to become a Tribulation Sword Master. The figure said slowly, every generation of Tribulation Sword Master has great help. One of them is in charge of the sword tip. Others are in charge of the sword tip, the sword blade, the sword guard, the sword tassel, the sword hilt, the sword tongue, the sword pommel. When all these people are gathered, it's the Tribulation Sword. The sword masters the world. Is this the origin of the great ruling clans? Chu Yang asked quietly. That's right. The existence of the great ruling clans is the world's compensation for the tribulation. The figure's voice was calm and slow. And the existence of Tribulation Sword Master is to lead the tribulation and complete the mission of the Tribulation Sword. Compensation? Why compensation? Chu Yang was shocked. Because they will be sacrificed in the end. The figure smiled. However, the sacrifice of one person in exchange for the prosperity of his clan for 10,000 years is compensation. It's worth it. Sacrificed in the end. Chu Yang's face turned cold. He laughed coldly. But the figure smiled. Because the world needs them to be sacrificed. And their sacrifice will be caused by you. Their sacrifice will be caused by me. Chu Yang sneered. The figure said, because you've led them to the tribulation. Therefore, you have to personally send them to the heavens. Chu Yang laughed coldly. Therefore you have to let it go. The figure said, because they're only your tools. They're not your brothers. They're your tools. You can use them however you want. As long as they're of the greatest value to you, why do you care? Only if you let it go, you can get out immediately. And obtain the fourth fragment of the Tribulation Sword. Charge into the upper three heavens and achieve greatness. Let go of kinship. Let go of brotherhood. Let go of love. The figure said word by word. Every word exploded in Chu Yang's heart. Tribulation Sword, this stage, is to break your love. Break your love, break your love. Only by letting go of all your restraints can you reach the other side. The figure's voice became cold for the first time. If you can't let it go, if you can't see past it, you'll never get out. You've done enough for them. The figure said, you've given them the path to success. You've given them the hope of reaching the peak. You've given them 10,000 years of prosperity. You've given, what they've given me is no less than what I've given them. Chu Yang interrupted the figure. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want to talk about who gave more to whom. It's meaningless. Therefore, please disappear. The figure smiled and said, but you'll regret it. Regret? Chu Yang faintly smiled. Since you know so clearly, then you should know that I'm a person who has already died once. So what? The figure said, after all, you're still alive. Being alive is the most important thing. What I want to say is, in this life, I've profited. Chu Yang smiled. Even if I can't get out, so what? I've just returned what I've gained. I've taken advantage of it. The figure smiled. Do you think that if you don't let it go, if you don't give in, if you sacrifice for your brothers, they'll be able to live? The Tribulation Sword Master and his tribulation are one. If the Tribulation Sword Master dies, even if the others don't die, they'll live an ordinary life. The figure smiled coldly. They won't be able to live either. After all, that's after I die. Chu Yang said indifferently. As long as I'm alive, I won't let them die. No one, including myself, can hurt them. If I die, then it won't matter anymore. Because I won't be able to see or control them. I won't care about things that I can't control. But as long as I'm conscious, I won't send them to their deaths. Chu Yang's voice was soft but firm. The shadow sighed and said, if you insist on going your own way, then you won't be able to complete the mission of the Calamity Sword. At that time, the Level Sky Continent will be turned into ruins because of you. Everyone in the Level Sky Continent will be turned into powder. He asked solemnly, could it be that you're willing to disregard the world for these few people? Chu Yang said lightly, if I can use the lives of all the people in the world to exchange for their lives, then I think I will do it. But if I use their lives to exchange for the world's peace? He rolled his eyes and said coldly, what do the world's lives have to do with me? The figure was furious. Chapter 723. Chu Yang laughed coldly. Me? What about me? He raised his eyebrows. Such a heartless path. Even if I can reach the peak, what's the fun in being alone for the rest of my life? Others might choose, but I, Chu Yang, would rather die. Chu Yang finally understood one thing. Back then he had asked the sword spirit, are all the previous masters of the Tribulation Sword heartless? The sword spirit did not reply. Looking at it now, it was likely that those people had chosen to sever their relationships during the process of obtaining the fourth fragment, and in the end, all of their brothers were buried. Chu Yang snorted in his heart. He suddenly felt a sense of disdain. Betraying his brothers and giving up on his love and family. So what if such a person reached the peak of the world? He would still be a pitiful person. What does the world have to do with you? The shadow stared at him for a while and suddenly laughed. However, if the world is destroyed because of your selfish decision, won't you feel guilty? Chu Yang laughed. But if I kill my brothers with my own hands, I'll feel even more guilty. If the world dies because of me, I'll feel guilty. But they have nothing to do with me. If I feel guilty, I'll feel guilty, because I don't have a specific target. But my brothers have been with me day and night. He smiled faintly. Besides, if I'm here today, even if the world dies, how can I feel guilty? If that's the case, when I reach the netherworld, do I still have to be responsible for the ghosts? Chu Yang said fiercely, I, Chu Yang, only have 2 shoulders and 1 head. I can't shoulder the world. But I can shoulder my brothers. To me, that's enough. To them, that's enough. You really can't give up? The shadow asked word by word, as if it was an ultimatum. Scram. This was Chu Yang's answer. You're so annoying. If you want me to live, then you better hurry up and fucking do it. What's the point of wasting your saliva? Ever since I came to this world, I've never thought of going back alive. The figure stared at him for a long while before he suddenly smiled and said, since you can't make this decision yourself, then someone else will make it for you. With that, he waved his hand. Chu Yang immediately felt that something was amiss. He shouted, what are you doing? The figure gave a strange smile. You'll know in a while. His hand flicked. Suddenly, a thin tornado appeared above Chu Yang's head. The tornado swept out from the bottom to the top. With a swoosh, the nearby water flow suddenly disappeared at the same time. This place had turned into a dry zone. Then, the tornado flew out, sweeping the sky and sweeping the earth. From the eye of the tornado, Chu Yang could even see the clouds and light in the sky outside. As the tornado formed in the sky, there was a sudden whooshing sound. Chu Yang's tent was rolled up into the air. Then, it silently turned into a mass of clouds in the air. Then, Mo Tianji and the others who were caught off guard also rushed up into the air. They couldn't control their bodies at all. Tan Tan let out a fierce shout. His eyes emitted a jet-black divine light. It seemed as if this tornado had reminded him of some unbearable memories. He suddenly let out a loud roar and straightened his body. Then he waved his hand in midair and tore a hole in the tornado. Then he grabbed Xie Danfeng with one hand and flew out amidst a long and loud shout. Then he flashed and disappeared to an unknown place. He disappeared without a trace. However, Mo Tianji and the others didn't have Tan Tan's terrifying foundation. They could only helplessly follow the tornado. Then they fell rapidly. Then, a huge pit of ice and snow suddenly appeared on the ground. Mo Tianji and the others were suddenly buried in this pit. Then the snow covered them. It was flat. Mo Tianji and the others faintly felt that their souls had left their bodies and were floating up. Then they followed the tornado in the center of the lake and threw themselves into it like moths to a flame. The lake of despair was split into two sides. Then, the waves wrapped around a few transparent souls and quickly shrunk back. The lake was as calm as a mirror. At this moment, Chu Feiling and his wife climbed up the mountain in exhaustion. The two of them were so tired that they vomited blood. However, when they came up, they saw that everything was calm. It was as if nothing had happened here. The entire mountain seemed to have been cut open by a sword. It was so flat that they could see the end of it. Was there a second person? Where is he? Yang Ruolan didn't even have time to catch her breath. She jumped up and ran along the lake of despair to search. Chu Feiling looked around. His eyes were filled with confusion and sorrow. Where is he? They clearly said that the child is up there. But where is he? Yang Ruolan's eyes were filled with tears. They were about to fall uncontrollably. She ran in circles for a long time. Suddenly, she looked up and screamed. Her voice was shrill. Where is he? Where did he go? My child, where are you? Then she fell down. Yang Ruolan placed all her hopes, all her blessings, all her regrets, and all her efforts to make up for it. She was certain that it was her child. He was absolutely certain of his location. She had worked so hard to find this place. But, for some inexplicable reason, he couldn't see anything. Yang Ruolan's heart had been boiling like boiling oil. However, it was suddenly extinguished. In that instant, her limbs turned cold. Her heart turned to ashes. At the bottom of the lake, there was a turbulence. Chu Yang looked on in a daze. Suddenly, he was shocked. Mo Tianji, Gu Du Xing, GMO, Luo Kudi, Ao Xie Yun, Xie Danqiong, Huyan Albua. These 7 people suddenly appeared in front of him in an illusory form. The illusory figure laughed and said, I'm sorry. I'm just a divine consciousness now. I can't summon their bodies. Therefore, I can only lock their souls and let them make a decision for you. Despicable. Chu Yang gritted his teeth. Mo Tianji and the rest saw Chu Yang too. Their eyes were filled with joy. The godly soul's body gently rippled in the water without any fixed pattern. Then Chu Yang felt that he was being shielded. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He could only watch and listen. Mo Tianji, GMO and the rest were also locked. They couldn't see or hear anything. They were worse off than Chu Yang. Outside, there was only Gu Duxing left. Gu Du Xing. The illusory figure said, Tell Chu Yang, are you real? Gu Du Xing laughed coldly. What do you mean? To prove that you're really here. The illusory figure said. Gu Du Xing laughed. Why? Although Gu Du Xing wasn't good with words, he was a smart person. When he saw the situation and heard this question, he guessed that Chu Yang was in an illusory realm. Whether he admitted it or not, it wouldn't do Chu Yang any good. Therefore, Gu Duxing would never admit or deny it. However, Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Then they dimmed. He was sure that it was Gu Duxing's soul that was here. Just based on Gu Duxing's personality. The illusory figure smiled. That's okay. Gu Duxing, do you know who your boss is? Gu Duxing snorted and retorted, what does it have to do with you who he is? What does it have to do with me? The illusory figure laughed. You have the same bad temper. Gu Duxing, let me ask you. If Chu Yang needs you to sacrifice yourself to save him, are you willing to do so? Gu Duxing was stunned. Although he was unwilling to work with this strange, illusory figure, he had to consider carefully. Because Chu Yang was listening. He said slowly, if boss needs me to sacrifice myself, I, Gu Duxing, will have no objections. However, his eyes flashed and he said lightly, but if someone uses boss's name to slander me, I will get to the bottom of it. You have to know that my life is not so easy to swindle. The illusory figure smiled warmly. If you don't, I'll kill him. He shook his hand and a sword appeared in his hand. He pointed it at Chu Yang's throat and used his strength. The sword pierced through Chu Yang's skin and blood dripped out. He said coldly, this is the moment. Gu Duxing, make your decision. If you don't, I'll kill him. If you don't, I'll let him go. There can only be one of you. Only one can live. Now it's your turn to choose. Gu Duxing laughed and said, choose? Choose my ass. There can only be one of you. Of course, it's me. He strode over and grabbed the sword with his hand. He laughed coldly. You underestimate me. He used his strength and slashed his own neck. You dare. Chu Yang roared silently. Blood seeped out of his eyes. He glared at Gu Duxing and used all his strength to shout, if you don't, I'll definitely do the same. You want to be righteous and have no regrets. I won't let you do as you wish, Gu Duxing. Gu Duxing laughed loudly. Boss, even if you want to do the same, it'll be in front of you. I won't be able to see you. But I definitely won't let you do the same while I'm alive. I'd rather you feel guilty than to let me feel guilty for you. He actually slammed his own neck against the sword. The illusory figure seemed to be moved. With a flick of his wrist, Gu Duxing's soul was pushed to one side and was surrounded by water. Emotianji was released. Emotianji, if Chu Yang needs you to do the same for him, are you willing to do the same for him? The illusory figure asked. Of course not. Emotianji smiled faintly. His expression was calm. Why not? The illusory figure was stunned. I'm me and he's him. We are two people. So, why should I have to seduce him if he wants me to seduce him? Emotianji ridiculed. The friendship between us isn't that deep. Emotianji's wisdom was as vast as the sea. He naturally knew that he could not follow the illusory figure's words. Once he fell into his trap, then his sword heart would truly be broken. Hence, no matter what the illusory figure asked, he would do the opposite. If Chu Yang does the same, Emo Qingwu will do the same. The illusory figure said coldly, use your life to exchange for both of them. If you don't, I'll kill him now. Chapter 724. Emotianji could not help but be stunned. If Chu Yang was the person he had the highest hopes for, then Emo Qingwu was the person he cared about the most. Now, the lives of these two people were in front of him, and he had to make the decision. Even though Emotianji was the master of calculation and manipulation, he could not help but be stunned. Then he regained his senses. I don't. Before Emotianji could finish, the shadow interrupted him. You don't have to lie. You were stunned just now and that explained everything. With a wave of his hand, Emotianji and Gu Duxing were stunned. Then, it was GMO and Luo Kadi. The two of them started cursing and swearing the moment they came up. They were easily dealt with by the shadow. Then it was Ao Xieyun. After a long while, the shadow waved his hand and locked Emotianji and the rest up. He faced Chu Yang alone. How is it? The shadow looked at Chu Yang proudly. Even if you don't want to, your brothers are prepared. So, it doesn't matter if you want to or not. You have to give up. Chu Yang was deep in thought and finally raised his head. I'm very curious, he said slowly, breaking off feelings may be a cultivation method. I, the current master of Calamity Sword, am not in a hurry. Why are you in a hurry? The shadow was stunned. You can't wait to destroy our relationship? You want to destroy our friendship? Chu Yang's gaze became sharper than ever. The shadow was stunned. You can't stand the beauty? Chu Yang pressed, why? The phantom involuntarily took a step back. Chu Yang thought of this and it was as if he had broken a cage in his heart. His thoughts became clearer. This is the most beautiful relationship in the world. But you can't wait to destroy it. Could it be that you've been destroyed before? Have you lost it? Chu Yang looked at the shadow coldly. Is that why you feel unbalanced? The shadow's body shook violently. His voice was as cold as ice. You're spouting nonsense. You know whether I'm spouting nonsense or not. Chu Yang looked at him mockingly. Are you envious of my brothers? Are you jealous? Do you feel resentful? Do you really want this relationship to not exist? The phantom steadied itself and laughed sinisterly. What did you think of? I didn't think of anything. I just felt that you were jealous of me. Chu Yang looked at him proudly. So I'm very proud, very proud. You are indeed inferior to me. You're far worse than me. The phantom glared at Chu Yang fiercely. Jealous of you? Who do you think you are? I have brothers. You didn't. Or maybe you once had one, but you abandoned it. So you're jealous. I have the ability to dominate the Sword of Calamity, but you don't. That's why you're here to destroy it. If I, Chu Yang, am a god in the heavens, then you are a pitiful worm on the ground. Chu Yang was merciless. He said sarcastically, if I, Chu Yang, am the bright moon in the sky, then you are a pile of shit on the ground. You're worse than a pile of shit. Because I already know who you are. Chu Yang fiercely clenched his teeth and said, you are a complete and utter trash. The phantom screamed in rage, bullshit. You know who I am? How can you know who I am? Chu Yang said coldly, I thought that you were a divine consciousness left behind by one of the seniors who created the Sword of Calamity. But then I realized that you're not. Why am I not? Why can't I be him? The phantom screamed. Because, although that senior destroyed the heavens once, his motive was to ensure that there would be no conflict in the heavens. So, although his methods were cruel, his motive was good. He wanted to save the heavens. And you obviously want to destroy the heavens. Chu Yang gritted his teeth. To think that you're threatening me with the lives of the heavens. So you're definitely not him. Chu Yang laughed coldly. I'm afraid that you're only here to test me. That's all. And you, a piece of trash, actually changed the nature of the test. This is your own selfishness, isn't it? The fog on the figure's face suddenly dispersed, revealing a square face with big ears and a wide mouth. However, at this moment, this dignified face was filled with panic. This figure's forehead was actually dripping with cold sweat. Facing Chu Yang, who could not move, he actually took 2 steps back. The reason why the previous masters of the Sword of Calamity were so heartless, was it because of you? Chu Yang laughed coldly and stared at him. Originally, when I said this, I wasn't sure who you were. But now, I know who you are. The phantom shouted, then tell me, who am I? You are the first master of the Sword of Calamity. Chu Yang shouted, you are that bastard. Scum. Bastard. You went down the wrong path, but you caused the entire heavens to go down the wrong path. You are an unforgivable, despicable and shameless person. The phantom stumbled back, his face pale. He was in a sorry state. Chu Yang finally understood everything. Why did this test become the severing of emotions? Didn't he also sever emotions in his previous life? But where were his achievements? And now, in this life, the Sword of Calamity was asking him to sever emotions again. How could this be? If Chu Yang was completely immersed in the illusion at the beginning, then Meng Charon's accidental appearance made him sober up for a while. But until the phantom appeared and told him and forced him, this test required him to sever emotions, to sever all emotions. It was only then that Chu Yang regained his clarity of mind. Because he had severed emotions before. It was precisely because he severed emotions in his previous life that it led to Mo Qingwu's tragedy, which led to Chu Yang's regret, which led to his rebirth in this life. How could Chu Yang be willing to repeat the same mistake? If he still had to sever emotions in this life, then what was the use of being reborn? Just to repeat the path that he had already taken? To repeat the regrets of the past? Chu Yang only discovered some suspicious points after slowly unraveling the cocoon. When the phantom forced him, his heart was clearer. When the phantom actually captured Mo Tianji and the rest, Chu Yang was already sure. This wasn't a test, it was obviously forcing him to his death. A test? There was no need to force him to such a dead end, right? Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. There was another point. The sword spirit reminded him time and again that the biggest obstacle in this test was the loss of his spirit. But this phantom said that it didn't matter if his spirit was damaged. The key was to sever emotions. Chu Yang would rather believe the sword spirit than this phantom. The sword spirit wouldn't lie. So the key was definitely the spirit and not the sever emotions. So this guy was lying. He was playing a trick. Since he was lying, there must be a conspiracy. Why was there a conspiracy? He was just a phantom, so why was he so persistent? At this point, Chu Yang understood half of it. As he boldly speculated and hurriedly said one sentence after another, he unexpectedly discovered that this phantom's true identity. So Chu Yang immediately launched a counterattack. The phantom had existed here for 80,000 years. There had been 7 tribulations sword masters. After such a long time, no one could see through him or suspect him. Now that Chu Yang had exposed him, even though he was just a remnant of his consciousness, he couldn't help but be confused and scared out of his wits. And his reaction had confirmed Chu Yang's conjecture. But at this point there was still the biggest doubt. Why was this phantom here? If he didn't have the permission of the creator of the tribulation sword, how could he be here? Since he was allowed to be here, why was he allowed to do whatever he wanted without stopping him? Chu Yang's eyes flashed as he tried to think. But he couldn't figure out what was going on. Haha. The phantom laughed bitterly. Not bad, you are indeed the most outstanding tribulation sword master. You guessed everything correctly. His square face showed a hint of savagery. He said happily, "That's right, I am the first tribulation sword master. I was the first to come here and accept the test of the 4th fragment. My family, brothers and lovers all died in front of me. Then the phantom told me to forget them, to use them as tools. I did as I was told. But I failed. This is a bastard." He roared crazily. Since he wanted us to fulfill his wish, why did he set up such an obstacle? The phantom laughed bitterly. After I left, I followed the instructions here strictly and walked the path of heartlessness. After I unified the heavens, I put this brother into the foundation of the heavens. Why did he do that? Wasn't it to complete his task? But why was it wrong? Why did I end up as a remnant of my soul and get trapped here? Why did he give me a new task to remind you? Pa. The phantom laughed crazily. Why should I be so kind? I walked the wrong path. Why do you have to walk the right one? Why? Chu Yang looked at him pitifully. You are crazy. Yes, I am crazy. So, if you want to be destroyed, we will all be destroyed together. Anyway, this is a test of the soul. If you can't pass the test, that's your problem. What has it got to do with me? The phantom laughed bitterly. But your task is just a test. You shouldn't have made your own decision and led people astray. Chu Yang said sternly. So many beautiful feelings were destroyed by you. How can you be so proud? Beautiful feelings? Pa, why didn't I destroy them? If I can't have them, no one else can. The phantom laughed crazily. If anyone wants to have them, it should be me, the first tribulation sword master. Not you. Unreasonable. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of saliva in contempt. So what if you know? What can you do to me? The phantom laughed evilly. Your soul is missing. You will never be able to get out of this phantom. That's your fatal wound. You can only wait for the 10th tribulation sword master. But by then I will still be here. I will still be here. Chapter 725. As long as I'm still here, who can succeed? The figure opened his arms and laughed maniacally. Who can succeed? Even if the world grows old, no one will be able to pass through here. As he spoke, his illusory body suddenly shook and became slightly thinner. His expression changed. He waved his hand and shouted, "Go!" The divine souls of Emotianji, Gu Du Xing and the rest flew out. Let them live in the outside world. You can stay here forever. The figure laughed. It's not that you don't want to keep them here. It's just that you don't have the ability to do so, right? Chu Yang's eyes were sharp. Naturally, he noticed his weakness. He looked at him mockingly. That's all you can do. So what? The figure laughed maniacally. Do you think you can fight with me here? Chu Yang laughed. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. You said you can kill me, but you didn't. If you could kill the past masters of Calamity Sword, you would have done so long ago. So you're limited. You can't kill me. You can only use tricks. So, you can't kill me either. Chu Yang said with certainty. So, you can't kill Tianji and the rest. So, you can only let them go. You've been bluffing all this time. You don't have any power at all. You're just a useless piece of trash. You're just a dog that only knows how to bark. Chu Yang's words were as sharp as a knife. Every word he uttered was like a sharp blade that cut into the spiritual realm of this phantom bit by bit. He was merciless. The figure shouted angrily. Then he laughed sinisterly. I can't do anything to you. However, don't forget that your divine soul is damaged. You can't get out of this illusion even if you want to. Are you trying to anger me? You're the master of Calamity Sword. I was once the master of Calamity Sword too. Do you think I'll fall for your trick? Chu Yang laughed coldly and said, if the past masters of Calamity Sword could get out, why can't I? Do you think I'll believe you? The figure laughed, but none of the past masters of Calamity Sword had a damaged divine soul. You, on the other hand, are damaged. Chu Yang sneered, so what? Phantom was overjoyed. So what? Your question is really funny. His soul is damaged, and he's at the turning point of the Calamity Sword. You still want to leave? Unless you're daydreaming. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes and stared at him. Then he suddenly smiled strangely. You seem to be very weak right now? That should be the case, right? The phantom was stunned. What do you mean? Or perhaps you're here just to test me. As for the strength of your spiritual energy, when your test is over, there won't be much left, right? Chu Yang laughed and said, it seems like that almighty master will never allow you to do whatever you want. So why are you still here? The figure hesitantly asked, what do you want to say? Chu Yang shook his arms, and suddenly walked out of the place where he was being restrained. The aura that had previously restrained Chu Yang from moving had suddenly disappeared without a trace. It had lost all effectiveness. Although I don't know how to get out of here, I believe that the way out lies with you. Chu Yang looked at him calmly, because you shouldn't be here, but you're here. Phantom's expression changed. Chu Yang's words seemed very contradictory, but from this, one thing was clear. It had faintly evoked the deepest fear in his heart. What do you want to do? Phantom took a step back and covered his chest with his hands. His face was full of vigilance. He could feel that his own strength was rapidly depleting, just like when he had trapped the other masters of Calamity Sword in the past. But in an instant, this figure had already become a little weak. At this moment, 3 clanging sounds were heard. 3 resplendent beams of light suddenly appeared in the distant land of flowing water. The 3 pieces of the sword that had followed Chu Yang down, the sword tip, sword edge, and sword blade suddenly flew over like meteors from afar. With a joyful sword sound, they whizzed into Chu Yang's dantian. Phantom was stunned, and suddenly shouted, Why are you, son? Chu Yang was confused by this sentence and said, Why can't I be Danton? Before the phantom could speak, a dense sword light suddenly emerged from Chu Yang's dantian. A section of the Calamity sword suddenly appeared beside him like a phantom. The phantom screamed and turned around to escape. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly stepped forward, grabbed his shoulder, and shouted, Where do you think you're going? A ripping sound was heard, and that arm was torn off by Chu Yang. At the same time, the sword light of Calamity sword struck out, and it pierced into the phantom's chest. Phantom's body froze as if he was struck by lightning, and he let out a long cry. His voice was mournful, and his face was full of despair. Chu Yang, who was holding the phantom's arm, was also stunned. He had only done this based on his instincts, but who would have thought that he would be able to tear off this guy's arm? Wasn't he a phantom? Why was his arm still in his hand after he tore it off? And the phantom, who had lost an arm, was still standing there, trembling. Chu Yang was confused. What's going on? At this moment, the Calamity space in his mind suddenly opened, and with a whoosh, Chu Yang's arm was sucked in. Chu Yang was empty-handed. The phantom screamed in agony. Ah, bastard! Give me back half of my soul. But the Calamity space did not care about him. He looked at Chu Yang with a face full of hatred, but he could not move his feet. It was as if he was fixed there by the sword light of Calamity sword. Chu Yang felt his vision blur, and he had already arrived in his mind. In the Calamity space, in front of him, there was a faint, fog-like figure. It was only 1/3 the size of Chu Yang's mind, and it looked like the phantom outside, the first-generation Calamity Swordmaster. At this moment, this squarish face was full of despair and pleading, and there was also an indescribable ruthlessness and viciousness. A pair of eyes stared at Chu Yang. An irreconcilable atmosphere rose just like that. Why are you here? Chu Yang frowned. That phantom screamed, and suddenly pounced over like a gust of wind, biting Chu Yang's shoulder. Chu Yang felt a pain in his soul, and a piece of his body was bitten off. In a fit of rage, he kicked out. However, the phantom was not affected at all. It passed through his leg and bit down on his leg. A look of satisfaction and viciousness appeared on its face. Chu Yang's soul hurt again, and he had a flash of inspiration. He wants to devour me? In here, physical attacks will not work, because this is the Calamity space. The only way to attack is to devour each other. Just as he was thinking, that phantom seemed to have tasted the sweetness. After taking 2 bites of Chu Yang, its body seemed to have solidified, and it pounced over again. Chu Yang snorted and pounced over. If you can devour me, why can't I devour you? After all, only one person could survive in this space. Chu Yang opened his mouth wide and bit down on the phantom's body. The phantom trembled violently, and a look of extreme pain appeared on its face, but it could not break free. Even if it had lived for 10,000 years, it was just an ordinary soul. Moreover, this was only a small part of its soul. Chu Yang was the original owner of this space, and his soul had been tempered by the soul-quenching spring more than once. How could this wisp of remnant soul resist it? If the phantom's entire soul came in, it might cause some trouble. But right now, it was just a soul condensed from an arm, and it was absolutely no match for Chu Yang. In the Calamity space, 2 white dots, one big and one small, were chasing back and forth. The bigger one was naturally Chu Yang. Every time he caught up, he would take a bite. Every time he took a bite, Chu Yang would feel that he had gained some strength out of nowhere. It was as if this was not only a supreme delicacy, but also a supreme tonic. Chu Yang grabbed the last white dot and stuffed it into his mouth. He realized that his soul had grown a lot in the Calamity space, and there was a faint feeling of substance. As expected of the soul of the first-generation Calamity Swordmaster, it's really fucking nutritious. Chu Yang vomited. Thinking of such a big piece of tonic outside, he stood there and could not help but stand there. He thought, swallowing one piece is swallowing the whole thing is also swallowing. I might as well swallow them all. Minister Chu's ambition soared. His soul flashed and disappeared from the Calamity space. Outside, Chu Yang narrowed his eyes and stood there, with a faint smile on his face. The phantom trembled in front of him, looking at his face. Suddenly, Chu Yang opened his eyes, and there was an almost solid light in his eyes. He looked greedily at the phantom. The phantom was disheartened. "No," Chu Yang waved his hand, "catch him for me." The dense sword light of the Calamity Sword seemed to understand Chu Yang's words, and it floated towards Chu Yang with the phantom. Chu Yang chuckled, and the tribulation space suddenly opened. It was as if an ancient demon god had opened its bottomless black mouth in front of this phantom. The phantom struggled and cursed, and then it began to beg desperately, but it could not resist the Calamity Sword's coercion. "Let me go! You bastard, I used to be your master. How dare you treat me like this? Let me go! No, don't catch me. Chu Yang, you bastard! You'll suffer. Chu Yang, you bastard, you're despicable. Fight me if you have the guts. How can you be a hero when you plot against others? Chu Yang, I beg you, don't swallow me. I'll give you 10,000 years of experience. I'll give you all my wisdom. Chu Yang, I beg you, please let me go." The moment the phantom entered the calamity space, it completely broke down. I woke up late today and slept for a full 20 hours. There's still a little bit left. I've launched an event, the Glory of the Great God Badge. Well, it seems that as long as you subscribe to all of my works, you can receive this badge. Fortunately, I haven't written a lot. It's just 3 books. It's very easy. If you have enough money, please subscribe to it. Now, the author's name shows how many people have received the Glory of the Great God Badge. This is the sign of a hardcore fan. There are only 20 or 30 words behind my name. It's too embarrassing. If you have the ability, please go and receive it. Let me shine. Also, I can earn more money. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.